All right, stamp of approval, episode 14. I can't believe we are working our way, well into the teens. We're working our way toward episode 20, into the double digits now, but we're no longer the most scuffed podcast in the world. We've got guests. We've got very cool guests, great conversations. So I'm not going to use that moniker anymore because, it's disrespectful. So without further ado, tonight's guest is somebody who's been a regular in my chat for a long time, but somebody who I feel like I have a lot in common with. We're both seemingly obsessed with audio gear. We're both definitely obsessed with Silent Hill. So we know that that's a great fire starter for any conversation in my chat. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and give Mr. Future Mute a call here. And we'll get started.
Mr. Bond.
What's going on, man?
I was hoping I'd find my swivelly chair by now. Hasn't come in yet, so that kind of took away from the impacts.
Yeah. Let me go ahead and get my volume at 100%. I think it's pretty low because it's going through. Okay. All right, go ahead and test it really quick. Okay.
Hello.
All right, perfect. Now that's nice and loud. All right, let me go ahead and get this full screened here. And hopefully...
Did the image not mirror the way I wanted it to?
Yeah, so Discord mirrors it for you, but not for me. That kind of drove me nuts a couple days ago when I found that out. But yeah, for whatever reason, it does that for you, but not for me. I'm not sure why.
Odd.
Just Discord things. All right, cool. So I am going to have to move this, but otherwise we are in good shape. And I'll go ahead and move your logo up here, or your @ up here.
Always important to know where the ads are.
Yeah, I have it. It's so bad for me because I'm looking at the last thing that I window captured and it says Fortnite.exe. God, I wish I could just forget that night, dude. Even though
that money, I really do.
It was just a couple days ago.
Pay my bills.
Hey, what's up, Mag? Appreciate that. All right, well, awesome. We got this set up. So this is Mr. Future Mute. Like I said, he's been a regular in the chat for a long time. I've also visited his stream chat a couple times, but with the time difference, it's been a little bit odd to kind of set that up because as he told me last night, 8 p.m. for me is 10 a.m. for him because he does reside in Japan. So it's a little bit tough to coordinate these things. But that's why I want to say I appreciate you coming on, man. It's awesome that we finally set this up after all this time.
Absolutely. No, it's an honor and a privilege. I always saw this as kind of like, what do you call it? My New Year's resolution, where I'm like, okay, this year I'm going to get the studio set up and I'm going to get on a podcast and it's going to be stamps. And so I'm like, all right, I finally accomplished a goal this year.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that seems to be one of the toughest things. Me and all my friends, we always set New Year's resolutions, but it's just getting the plan together and actually executing on it is the tough part. So, but I'm excited. Like I said, Max says badass haircut. I agree. Looks awesome. A new little booth. Yeah, a new little booth competitor. So if you don't know the context about that, basically I had a job interview earlier this year, and one of the like higher up people in a company completely emasculated me by, I go on camera with all this behind me, but obviously I was wearing more professional attire. And he goes,
Right.
oh wow, real name. I love your little booth. And I'm just sat there like, really? That's how you're gonna start this, dude? And I'm just sat here like,
so that was you're just instantly setting up the power dynamic before the interview even begins. Like he has to assert his dominance over you. That's
yeah. He's like, look at this kid. Look at this kid and his little toys. Isn't that cute? It's like, come on, dude. And I told Mag about that, and she's just been running with it ever since. But yeah, so a couple things that I wanted to say, right off the bat. I think that we've already had some really great conversations just as in terms of, you being in the chat while I was playing certain Silent Hill games or just, having topics about content creation in general. So I'm really glad that, we're going to get a chance to talk about those things live and in person because I've kind of wanted to pick your brain on that for a while where I think, we're kind of cut from the same cloth where we grew up with YouTube and online content creation.
Yeah.
We saw it go from a news article that might pop up on CNN or Fox News or whatever, just oh my God, look at this viral Leave Britney Alone video. That's how it started. And then
It's true.
we slowly watched it build into this career path that now exists that is still incredibly young. It's not even a 20-year-old career path yet.
Mm.
Um,
It's it's I think it's entirely dependent too on the generation. There's a different type of philosophy and mode of conduct from younger and older content creators. I've definitely noticed that in the last couple of years or so. I guess after the world tour happened, people kind of just scrambled their brains and have a different means of engaging with the social media platforms that they utilize. So I think that that's kind of interesting to see that dramatic shift.
Yeah, and it's funny because people my age at first, they kind of shunned it as, oh, that's what, the hipsters do. They go on and they make these weird YouTube videos and try to go viral, and very quickly that dynamic shifted, and now this younger generation has just fully embraced it. And they're content brained, as they say. They come right out the
Yeah.
gate ready to get views, to get clicks, to get traffic to their videos. And it's definitely been a huge cultural shift watching people embrace it versus how a lot of people my age, which I'm 29, so I've seen everything. I've seen the beginning stages of it, the growth, and just the way that things have changed over the years, both live and YouTube related stuff. So
It is something that I had to kind of come to a realization to the other day, was that there's an entire generation that was completely built, out of the box with an iPhone attached to them. Like
yep,
someone like me who did not grow up in a generation where there was no, or excuse me, I grew up in a generation where there was no internet, where I
yep,
guess what kids would refer to as touching grass was essentially the go-to standard
yeah,
for growing up. So considering now that there's a generation entirely built around constantly engaging in a digital landscape, which is something I'm probably going to talk to you a little bit about later, because I
mhm,
definitely have my theories on this. But I think that it's so terrifying to think that when you're born 1 year in, 2 years in, and you have this large pad in front of you for the majority of your childhood. I feel like that's stunting. There's a state of perpetual monotony that you can definitely fall into, and I feel like that's
yeah.
extraordinarily dangerous.
Yeah, and this, like you were talking about with the whole touching grass thing, it's like, it just reminds me of this hilarious joke that one of my friends told off stream of, the song "Reach Out and Touch Faith" from Depeche Mode. He just out of nowhere
Oh
just
yeah, yeah.
breaks into
Oh,
song
dude.
and says "Reach out and touch grass." That's just
Yeah,
always what I think of. That was
love
our
that. It's
theme song, dude.
pretty
Yeah, I remember. Speaking of that, I kind of remember the iPhone when it first came out was like this novelty. I remember I was in 7th grade going into 8th grade. Like we had just started. We came back from our Christmas break, and I came in and I saw one of the preppier, like richer kids, and everybody's like crowded around his desk, and I'm like, what is going on
right,
over there?
right.
And he's showing people like, dude, you can tap this and you can just text people, and it's like a chat. And he was showing us that the text messaging, that's one of the biggest things that Apple did that people really don't think about is they changed texting from an inconvenient thing where people tried to reduce the number of letters they used as much as possible into
Right.
what amounted to a chat thread on your phone.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, I think that the whole concept of it being a status symbol hasn't changed all that much. I mean,
Yep.
we're always going to find these totems of importance or significance within our local communities and shit.
Mhm.
So when the iPhone did come out, I was already way into university. So if you had a phone, you had a phone. It doesn't really fucking matter if it's an iPhone or
Yeah.
not. But I do remember when the iPod was released,
Oh yeah.
that was a status symbol all its own. And I'm
Yep.
not talking about the ones that we have now where it's all just one big screen. Like legit the rotary,
Yep.
uh, the the rotary button thing. And I remember people walking in and just saying, now I can listen to music anywhere I want. I still
Yep.
had my dinky pink Sony Walkman from like 1994. Like I
Yep.
didn't care. But
Yeah.
it was very fascinating because you saw, the kids crowd around in the PC lounge and stuff, like
Yep.
just gawking at this thing. I
Yeah,
remember
the
those days.
iPod video, especially, I remember was kind of like that because it was almost like the precursor. You could drag and drop. Well, obviously, it had to all be done through iTunes, but you could put videos and photos on this thing, and it had the touch click wheel So you could,
Mm.
it was almost like a precursor to the way the iPhone had the swiping in the early iterations of iOS.
Right,
Of
right.
course, back then they just called it iPhone OS because there was no, there was no standard by which they were updating it every year. But yeah, I just remember when I think back to how limited that was, but how mind blowing it was to see. I mean, you couldn't even change your background. You couldn't even change your wallpaper in the first iteration of that
No.
software. And nobody
Well,
cared because the functionality was just so revolutionary.
exactly. And I don't even think what Generation 1 didn't even have color. It was just straight up an LED screen with
Yep.
black and white.
Yep.
With a backlight. And some of them didn't even have that. If you wanted to get it cheaper, you could get it without the backlight. So it was just I don't know. It was a glorified status symbol. And only the hoity-toity folks who had cool parents would have one,
Yeah.
and they weren't friends of mine. Not voluntarily, mind you. I
Yeah.
just wasn't cool enough.
Yeah,
And
and I
so
think I think it really changed and shifted whenever the 3G came out. Because I remember one of my friends was like big into Apple, like his family had Macs and everything, and I was over at his house and he was showing me the Macworld presentation. Because back in the day, they used to do their. Nowadays, they have their own preset dates where they do the presentation for their new products or whatnot. But back then, they used to do it at a conference called Macworld, which was kind of like the developers conference for them
sounds
back
familiar.
then.
Like it was like the CES, but it was exclusively for Mac products. I
Yep.
think I do remember reading that in like PC Gamer or something like that. I remember reading it in a magazine, like
Yep.
at a Barnes and Noble, and I'm like, oh, there's this thing that happens every year.
Yeah, and that's actually where they did the original iPhone presentation too. But the big thing that year, that whole presentation was about how do we make this more available to more people. So they had these 5 goals. They're like, we need to make it more affordable. We need to offer a color option. We need to introduce an app store that's official and this, that. And basically the whole presentation, they were going off checking each individual box. And the crowd was like uproariously applauding at the fact that they made it $199 instead of, $399. And this was back in the day where you literally had to sign a 2-year contract with a provider before they,
Right.
before they axed that several years later. But yeah, whenever that happened, then I remember coming in and seeing everybody with that plastic back with the silver Apple, the iPhone 3G. That was when the explosion really happened in my mind. And we kind of have never looked back.
I guess that's true. Since they did have a pipeline where they were going to make things more affordable for the average consumer, I
Yeah.
feel like that's when. I mean, it already had its status as a symbol of luxury and wealth and success and et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, when it started becoming something that everyone could afford, and it was something that was an installment plans. Yeah, I can definitely remember when everyone I knew had an iPhone, and I guess the big deal about it was, I guess when FaceTime happened, that's when it got to
Oh,
be a
yeah.
big deal.
The iPhone
Yeah.
4. Yeah, that was massive too.
Yeah, that's when that just changed the game where it's like, now I can talk to you like this. I don't know. I guess I've never owned an iPhone in my life. My mom owns. She's what are they on the iPhone 14 now?
I think
don't
I
even know.
think the 15 came out this year. I have a 14, but I started with the iPhone 4, and I'm just one of those people that like I fully submit that Android phones have more functionality, more customizability, they're better at sort of pushing the envelope of mobile technology. I fully submit that, but the thing is, I've just been with it for so long and I have everything exactly as I want it. And I just don't really like to restart. It's like every iteration, they make it easier and easier to upgrade. I mean, it's to the point now that you power the new phone on, you get this custom like 3D QR code on your original phone, hold the camera up to it, and within 30 minutes, your new phone is set up and the old one's ready to send back. So it's like, they make it so easy, dude.
That's pretty convenient, I have to admit. This is coming from someone who's never owned an iPhone before. So, like, yeah, that does sound quite fascinating. The only Mac product I've ever owned is a MacBook, and I exclusively use that for music production or for sound editing.
Yeah,
That's
because
all it's for me.
yeah, people don't know that's like where they got their start was pro audio and pro video. Like that's when they really got a hold of the market share. You used to watch like Coldplay concerts. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You'd watch like Coldplay concerts, and next to the keyboard that Chris Martin's playing, there's a MacBook sitting there where they're like playing samples and all these different things. But kind of going back, that kind of leads us into our first yeah, Apple related tangent. You know how it goes. Yeah, our first the first question I like to ask a lot of people, but something specifically I wanted to ask you because I know you have a history in making some content online. What when you first started hearing about, YouTube, and you first started hearing about live streams? I remember initially it was Ustream, and then a little bit, a couple years later was Justin TV. What
Right.
initially attracted you to it, and what types of videos did you usually watch back then?
All right, this is gonna hurt. This is gonna go way. We're going way back now.
Absolutely.
Um, so I guess I originally heard about just the whole concept of streaming back in university because it's it was around I guess sophomore year or so. I really was like focused exclusively on YouTube. I don't know, like YouTube was way more of my piqued curiosity. Um, I thought Ustream and Justin.tv, like granted they were, interesting if you're like super into gaming, which
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, I was, but my focus was exclusively on like retro shit. I was playing Dreamcast and PS2, and they weren't playing that kind of stuff over on Justin TV and whatnot. And
Yeah.
legitimately, as far as I was concerned, you being able to play a video game from your computer and then stream it just seemed like black magic to me. So I just did not know how the hell it was how the hell it worked
Yeah.
back then. I didn't know anything about capture cards or anything like that. I was fairly greenhorn back then.
Yep.
But I was interested a lot in YouTube and content creation in that regard. And back then, YouTube was the Wild West. We're talking what, '09,
Oh yeah.
2010?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there were no rules, there were no regulations.
Yeah.
You just had, you had your pioneers of their craft, and those were kind of, the folks that I really got into. I remember like in high school, we were watching, these like random like you like just like joke videos like Super Greg and those Flash cartoons that you'd find on like Newgrounds and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I was always curious about like humor and comedy on YouTube. When YouTube came out, that was the kind of stuff I was watching. When AVGN hit the scene and
Oh yeah, that was massive.
Spoonie One was there, I
Yeah.
sat and watched that stuff because I'm like, I love this stuff. It's entertaining and it's funny and everyone was watching it. And it was just something to have on in the background while you were working. Because when you're in uni, I was in uni and I was, hitting deadline after deadline after deadline, but I needed something in the background just to, keep myself laughing and motivated and not crying in a corner.
Insane. Yeah, got to keep yourself sane.
Exactly.
Trust me. I did a CIS program at my university, and that's exactly how it was. It was just one deadline to the next, caffeine 24/7, no sleep to speak of. Like it's crazy.
Yeah. And so with that just kind of in the background, it was just kind of like, this stuff is kind of fun. I never thought to, you know, engage with it in a productive way because
Yeah.
I'm already going to art school. Like I'm already fucking doing this shit.
Yeah.
Or I'm already working. I'm already being productive, but I'm just doing it for the sake of my work, But yeah, I guess that's where it all started. And then once I moved uh to Japan, um I don't know, because that, around that time, YouTube was starting to form. There were a lot more creators. I think at one point or another, MatPat already started making his videos, but he was very small back then. I mean, this
Yeah.
was his old school stuff where he was still recording things in his closet. Um, but I saw the merit of creating intelligent content that could also be funny, but about niche, topics. So I thought that was a really, novel idea. But it wasn't until
Hello there.
somewhere down the line
How you
when these two
been?
dickheads named Aaron and John started making noise on retro games,
Yeah.
and and that's when I'm like, okay, I want to make something. I want to make stuff like this. It was the Game Grumps, by the way. The Game
Yeah.
Grumps is what motivated.
Man, remember? Oh, that's a real throwback. Remember the original iteration of Game Grumps with JonTron? That didn't last very long.
OG, Aaron
Yeah.
and John. Those were the two.
Yeah.
They set me on a path to
Ye-
destruction. Keep in mind, I was doing a whole bunch of other shit at the time, but I'm like, I also want to do this.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, 100%
Absolutely.
agree. That's kind of what I remember too. Is like 2006 to 2008. I just remember people occasionally bringing up videos like shoes or leave Britney alone or that one David Me show like guitar improv, best guitar improvisation ever video. I remember people would bring that up occasionally, and we would like pull it up in the computer lab at school, but it was never oh, this is like a career path thing. Tay Zonde's
Exactly,
video went
exactly.
viral, and Tay Zonde has talked about this many times. It's like back then people would just look around like, okay, this thing's getting millions of views. Like, what do I do? Like, do I just
Right.
wait for business inquiries to come in now? Like, how does this work?
It's like it seems like it would be such a viable option if there's this many people curious about this thing you made.
Yeah.
You'd expect some kind of something to come out of it, something to manifest from it.
Yeah.
Down the line. But yeah, I never thought of it that way. I always thought it was, oh, this is a funny dumb thing that I watched, on a computer that was 240p at the largest.
Yeah.
Whatever. And then you just go about your day. But
the old
yeah,
240p we meet again meme that people used to throw around.
it's charming.
Yeah.
Even still, like, I'll go back to old videos that, from decades ago, like old music videos that definitely are never going to see the light of day again. Obscure indie shit, and they're all just 480p, and it's just like, I love it. It's charming.
Yeah, I remember when HD was 720p, and it was like, whoa, you can actually watch HD videos now. This is crazy. And it was just a link you would click where it said high definition. And some people would even just say to edit the URL to put like the HD code at the end. And nowadays, funny enough, if you guys go on YouTube and you select 720p, it doesn't even label it as HD anymore. It doesn't qualify as HD. Man, how far we've come.
Yeah. It's been a wild ride, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. And you know what's also hilarious? I think 2009 was arguably, like you said, I think that's the year where it kind of came into its own, because we started to see the emergence of like the top echelon of earners, and the fact like YouTube analytics being used as sort of a backdoor into someone's career was definitely something that nobody had ever heard of before. Like Google AdSense was a little bit cryptic back then, and I remember part of the terms of service is that you couldn't share that data directly with people. You couldn't tell people like, hey, I made X amount of revenue on this video.
Oh, right. Yeah, what was it, like some sort of an NDA that was built into the clauses?
Yeah,
built into the initial terms of service or whatever?
Yeah, and some people...
And the minute that you said that out loud on video or somewhere where someone recorded it and it could be, acknowledged and observed, it was the instant that you were shut off.
Yeah,
I remember that.
Yeah, they canceled people's AdSense for a lot less than that too. Like there was a guy, I don't know if anybody remembers Dark Side Phil back then, or DSP. Yeah, probably most famous nowadays for This Is How You Don't Play, but we're not going to get into that. That we'd be talking for hours.
You don't have to, but it's your show.
Back then, he actually made a video on his main channel saying, "Hey, go to my other channel and click on the ads." And then mysteriously, very shortly after that, his account was canceled because they were like, "Hey, you can't tell people to go click on your ads. That's considered a false click, or you just can't tell people directly about that." They had a lot of weird conditions and terms in the AdSense program back then. So you would hear a lot of creators, and I think this still exists today. They wouldn't use words like money or ad revenue. They would say support, or this lets me do this full time. These very vague terms that you get what they mean, but they would use words like that to kind of not obscure what they're talking about. I mean, it was clear what they're talking about, but they had to do that in such a way that they didn't violate those terms. And I think you still see that a lot today with like modern Twitch streamers. They will purposefully use cheaper gear, and they will keep their setups the same for years and years. And it's not to necessarily trick anybody, but it is to keep that air of like, I need frequent support, because, if you sit there and you have a really nice studio setup,
grow.
Absolutely. Yes. It helps the channel grow. That's a great way. But
Double speak is fun, but
oh yeah. And plus, 2010, that was really when I remember JonTron and the whole Normal Boots thing started around that time. And I was seeing like, oh, wow, people don't have to just rage about video games. They can make these sort of documentary style pieces like he would do. And one of my favorite things that he ever did was like the Goosebumps retrospectives and the Are You Afraid of the Dark retrospectives. And I was like, man, as much as AVGN is hilarious, and it's funny that he rages at older games, I like this sort of documentary style a little bit better, because I'm reminded of these things. I get this nostalgia hit, but it's also informing me about things maybe I didn't know before. So
it's interesting. No, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
No, it's like I always thought of it this way. I always thought of like the era of AVGN, the spoony one, the guy with the glasses stuff. I always thought of that as like the punk era of YouTube. And then, we had the Normal Boots guys, you had Peter Butter Gamer, you had Pro Jared, before the controversy. Like they were kind of like the post-punk era, where like now we've got, we've yelled and screamed, we got to say all we wanted to say with all of our vitriol. Let's dial it back a bit.
Yeah, let's inform people. Exactly. Let's be a little
Like
bit
getting
more
historian.
progressive. Yeah, absolutely. That's actually a great analogy because, we actually still see that today. Like for an example, even what I do with the Silent Hill videos, they are literally miniature sort of video essay type things. And video essays nowadays are absolutely, people talk about metas and they talk about the algorithm. They are the meta right now. You could make a 1 hour long video essay about something that you think nobody has any interest in, but if you have a catchy thumbnail and an interesting title, it will possibly get 1 million views because that's just the way, that's what people want now.
It feeds into the algorithm fairly well. And I think really it genuinely has everything to do with you being passionate about something, to
Yep.
go that far with it, to be that passionate about it, to get it to that point where it's been an hour, it's wonderfully edited, it's crisp, it's crisp audio, it's well scripted, you have a thought, you have a point to make, and you'd like to expand on that point for an hour. It's amazing that some people would actually sit down and do that. Now, don't get me wrong, modern day kids aren't watching 1 hour long videos anymore, but
Yeah.
at the same time, they're not watching YouTube anymore. They're
Yeah.
they're on TikTok.
TikTok
You know what I
and
mean?
yeah, short form content. Yeah,
Right.
that's the other interesting thing is when you look at the breakdown of the age demographics for these longer videos, it skews toward late 20s, late 30s now, whereas it used to be that the videos that were really popping off on YouTube were like, remember the meme about pushing for 10 minutes? It was like right at 10 minutes is the sweet spot. No longer.
Yeah.
Like 10 minutes and 5 seconds. That's the sweet spot for a YouTube video.
That's that happy little medium. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it was like the minimum to get ad revenue on it too. But now, it's just crazy for me to see channels like Lady Emily, who is a great channel, by the way. She does like these incredibly long documentary style videos about Cinemassacre and the other projects that Doug Walker, that guy with the glasses, has done. These videos are like,
watched her whole portfolio.
oh,
She's
they're
good.
it's amazing. They're like 3 hours. They are feature length films, and you look at the most replayed, where they have the sort of chart at the bottom of the video player. You can see, and it's well into the 2.5 to 2 hour and 45 minute mark. I'm like, what is this shift? Like people used to hate long form videos like this.
I think this is the generation. I'm sorry. I'm kind of. I don't know why I'm so nervous. I just woke up. Maybe that's what it is. I'm groggy.
Hey, it's no problem, man. I'm just getting caffeinated myself, so anytime I get freshly caffeinated, I'm also a little bit stumbly over my words.
But I think it's the fact that our generation is growing up with a constantly shifting YouTube algorithm. So the stuff that we found funny, that was that 10-minute short form stuff, or
Yeah.
shorter than what we're watching now, is because we grew up with that, and now we want something more out of our content. The
Yeah.
kids who are walking out of the gate of the hospital with an iPad in their hand, they're not watching what we're watching. We're
Yeah.
watching something else, a lot more depth and a lot more, I don't know, significance. I wouldn't call these things that we're talking, these niche discussions about what Doug Walker's been doing for the last 2.5 years is
Yeah.
particularly pertinent to your daily life.
Yeah.
But there's an amount of joy and passion and focus to it that we grew up watching that dumb stuff that was 10 minutes long, and now you guys are discussing that stuff for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Curious. This is interesting to me. I want to sit down and watch this.
Yeah, I saw a tweet. By the way, I refuse to call it X. That is such a cringe name. But anyways, I just continue to call it Twitter because that's what the domain name is. But I saw a tweet that was like, 15 years ago on YouTube, and it was like guy slips and falls on ice, and then in parentheses, hilarious. And then it's like modern YouTube, and it shows a 3 hour long video that says how man slips on ice and falls changed the YouTube's dynamic forever. And it's like a feature length movie about the impact of the video. It was just like a meme example photo, but everybody in the comments was like, this is so true. Like, this is what everybody does now. They take old YouTube videos and they extrapolate them into these super long video essays.
It's these deconstructionist thesis statements that they're all right.
And I see that in horror all the time too. Like Tango Mushi is a channel I love, and she's like, oh, Silent Hill 3. Here's an in-depth analysis of it, and it's like an hour and 15 minutes long. I'm like, wow, like, back in the day, our computers would have exploded exporting a video like this to YouTube. Like,
oh God, yes.
And Adobe Premiere would have crashed, and Sony Vegas would have crashed.
Windows NT wasn't meant for this, man.
Yeah. But yeah, that kind of brings us in. That kind of actually covered both questions, because I was going to ask you about your introduction to streaming and gaming content online. So mine is very similar. Streaming it actually started from Zelda speedruns of all things, as I discussed with Pinku Idol a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I remember you talking about that.
Yeah, that
you
was
mentioned it multiple times with She and with Gummy too, I think.
yeah, that was with the Ustream originally, and there was also a guy named Chris Perillo who used to be on Tech TV. He has like this famous. There was a segment called Call for Help, or a show called Call for Help on Tech TV before they merged with G4, and it was basically you just call in and get general advice about, email clients and web browsing and different things, because these were new concepts that people had in their homes in the late 90s. And they did like this, I forget if it was a charity marathon or something, but they were on air for like 27 hours, and he just had a complete meltdown laughing fit. And it's like one of the biggest memes ever of early internet. But Chris Perillo actually was the first guy to ever have the concept of a 24/7 live stream on Ustream. And he had all these different cameras posted up throughout his house with timestamps on the bottom. And just at any time you could go to his stream, you would see him sleeping, you'd see him waking up, getting his coffee, going to his desk, discussing how shitty Windows Vista was at the time. And that really blew my mind. I was like, wow, we are at the point where the internet can let you do things like this. And he had like a whole crew of people like maintaining his cameras and cabling and different things like that. It was wild.
Pioneered the first IRL stream.
Absolutely. And along with Justin Kan, who is the namesake of Justin TV. That's what Justin TV originated as, was one guy named Justin Kan just streaming his whole life. And then one day, him and all the admins, they were live streaming themselves working on sort of the back end of the website. And somebody in the chat was like, hey, why can't we also stream? And because of that one question, that pretty much started the whole existence of Justin TV, and then the eventual transition over to Twitch.
All right. Wow. I actually did not know that. Again, when I was watching, I knew that Justin TV existed. I didn't engage with it in any meaningful way, because I was in uni. But then when it became Twitch, and you saw a lot more people, a lot more personalities that were definitely antithetical to what YouTube was doing, was all scripted content, where this is all, free form, off the cuff, no edits.
Yeah,
you're there and you're doing it. I mean, some people were getting away with the fact that you had to keep gameplay on at all times, otherwise they'd ban you out.
Yep.
So like you'd have it like in one little corner of the screen.
Yep.
The same way they do the hot tub meta now.
Yep. Everybody back then would do League of Legends because it was the big free to play game. So these
right.
Listen, I didn't coin this term, but these titty streamers, as they would call them back then, and other ones too, if they wanted to basically make an IRL stream, you would turn on League of Legends, have it take up at least half the screen, and you would just go into like a quick play, however it works, and they would just move back and forth in the spawn and do an IRL stream, because it's like, hey, there's a game on, so you can't get me. I'm not violating any rules.
Right? This is totally legal.
Yeah. And I think, as things have changed, like you were talking about with the hot tub meta, people are always looking for loopholes. And I think that's why there was such an interest in Kick, because Twitch had made it clear, just based on their actions and the way that they handled certain things, that there were different standards depending on the size of your audience. And I think that really upset a lot of people. So that's why, there is this push to, I remember seeing a thing, I don't know if this still exists, but they were like, if you're a partnered streamer on Twitch, you can go to Kick and make a set, hourly rate of $19 an hour. That was apparently a thing that they did for a while.
Interesting.
And we all know where that money comes from, is gambling.
Right.
But at the end of the day, Twitch does need some competition. I think in any industry, in any market, if there's
a monopoly is a sham. Yeah. It's not a healthy way to conduct business, especially in this kind of society when you're dealing with late stage capitalism. No, you do not deserve to have an oligopoly of anything. No, absolutely not.
Yeah. How many people have ISPs where they're the only option? Like where I was living for the longest time in my hometown, which was down in Kona land, I'll say, down in the South, we had Spectrum and we had DSL. That was it. So if you wanted any semblance of modern internet speeds, you went to Spectrum. You didn't have any negotiating power when you called them on the phone about absurd rates or whatever. So yeah, if anybody's ever experienced a monopoly, they know it's horrible.
Oh my God. My only issue is that I feel like regardless on whatever end of the spectrum you are, being on the
Yeah.
extreme side of it is just never a good idea because you're always going to have individuals who are going to push the envelope, and that's always going to put whoever's responsible in hot water because they're the face of the company. So
Yeah.
for one thing, Twitch definitely can be a bit draconian and can be a little bit one-sided when it comes to certain aspects of their terms of service. At the same time, these fucking lunatics on Kick doing
Yeah.
ridiculously bonkers shit.
Yeah.
Compromising lives and like not just like ordinary being an ordinary nuisance, literally compromising people's lives.
Yeah.
Like people could die from the ridiculous shit that they do. It's
Yeah.
like, you
They're in the
where's
Wild West
the
phase
line?
right now, but the problem is they're in the Wild West phase as content creation is massive. So you have like the Jack Dohertys of the world doing these
Right.
IRL streams where they're streaming themselves fighting, fist fighting or whatever, like big groups of people fist fighting and
Security guards involved. Just
yeah.
being a general like just what's the word I'm looking for? Like just being just
Yeah,
a nuisance
menace.
to society at large.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you know, they're in the Wild West phase right now, and their terms of service is lacking, their moderation is lacking. And that's why, you know, I'm still seeing some people switch over to Kick just because it's the new interesting thing to do. What's up, Sick Boy, by the way, and Dave. But it's one of those things where it's like I feel like if you're already on Twitch and you're established on Twitch, it feels like this is a much safer place to conduct your live stream. Whereas if you go over there, you're more likely to get spam botted and view botted and doxed and all these different things. So yeah, you could argue it's the safer option, but I would not want to go over to Kick.
You cultivate an audience of people who hate watching rage bait, and
Yep.
that's the kind of engagement you're gonna get.
Absolutely. Yep.
Simple as that.
Well,
And I mean, sorry.
oh no, go ahead.
All right.
No, you're fine. We're too polite for
No,
each
no,
other,
no,
man.
go ahead.
That was something I know we talked a little bit about sort of the video essay style content and even a little bit about the stuff that I've put out on YouTube here recently. And I have so many projects, like so many project files in Adobe Premiere that I just haven't committed to finishing and putting on YouTube. But my question about that specifically is with Silent Hill, because both me and you have a lot of history with it. We have a lot of strong opinions about, you know, the way that these things have turned out over the years. What is it, do you think, about, because, you know, Resident Evil has so many more games, but it feels like there's way less theorizing and infighting among fans. And I see people ranking Resident Evil games all the time, but they're never talking about what things symbolize or what things mean. What is it about Silent Hill specifically that got you interested in the first place? Like, what was your first experience with it as a franchise?
So, like my first genuine experience aside, when I first exposed myself to Silent Hill, I definitely was somewhere in the realm of middle school.
Yep.
Like I genuinely don't remember a time before then. I was at a friend's house, and his brother always just left his PS1 games just just around. And I remember playing Tenchu with him one time, like the OG Tenchu 1.
Yep.
Great stealth shinobi game, highly recommended. But then we saw this other game because he did have Resident Evil, and I remember playing Resident Evil and just kind of being like, "Oh, this is wacky." But he put in Silent Hill. It was just this strange, this gray box with red lettering on it, and we were just kind of like, "The hell is this?" And we put it in, we played it, and at first it was like, "Is this like some kind of Resident Evil clone?"
Yeah, that's what I thought too. Yeah.
Didn't know what the hell we were playing. It was just, what is this? Why is it snowing? You know,
Yeah.
where are the fixed camera angles? What the hell is happening? And then the descent into the descent down the stairwell, and that we were just like, what the fuck?
Yeah. What the first
What is
nightmare?
happening?
Yeah, the first nightmare iteration of the town that you see. Yeah.
So that was the first time, and that was like the long and short of it. I think at that point we just stopped playing, and I went home. And I don't know, I never thought about it after that until high school, when a friend of mine let me borrow his copy of Silent Hill 2.
Yep.
Allow me to paint you a picture, if I may.
Yeah.
So on Friday nights, like my mom, she would work late, like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, she'd get home. So essentially, like during the weekend, I would have the house to myself. And our home entertainment space was not in our living room, it was down in our garage. You know, kind of cold, and you know, the steel grating of the garage door was always banging against the frame of the garage opening, you know, especially late at night when it was particularly windy at night.
Yeah.
And essentially I'd be home late at night, just kind of keeping to myself. Mom would always bring dinner home, like on our way back. But, in the meantime, I'd have to fend for myself. And I was in high school, so it's not that big a deal. We're talking like a sophomore, junior year
Yeah.
in high school. Invader Zim was still on. New episodes, no less, were playing on
Yeah.
Nickelodeon regularly.
Yep.
This is a quaint and simpler time.
Oh, yeah.
And one Friday night, I had brought that copy of Silent Hill 2 home with me because I had a PS2, obviously. And I don't know what time it was, around 9:30, 10 o'clock. Mom wasn't home yet. I was alone by myself in the dark playing this strange game. It was dark outside, the whistling of the wind against the branches of the trees against the window, the hard smashing against the grating of the garage door against the garage opening frame. I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I couldn't. I got to the apartments and I stopped. I could not do this.
Yeah.
It was single-handedly the most psychologically unsettling experience I think I've ever had playing a video game. And that's what turned me onto it at first. I'm like, okay, this is legitimately unsettling. I'm not okay with this.
Yeah.
It's dark, it's cold, I'm alone, and I don't want to do this.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that my first experience legitimately was Silent Hill 2 as well. And funny enough, it was the Platinum Hits Xbox edition of Restless Dreams. And I kind of felt that way too. I was like, Resident Evil was scary, but I almost felt like the box art back then to me was scarier than the real game. Like when I saw the game, it was all campy and there's like this cheesy dialogue going on. But this game, I was like, whoa, this is serious. Like this is no messing around. Within 2 minutes of this opening cutscene being over with, this really unsettling ambience is playing, and it's all this just droning bass, and you're already kind of on edge as to what's going on. You're curious what could be happening here. What's the deal with all this fog? So
I guess it's that initial. Oh, I'm sorry. I keep cutting you off.
No, totally fine, dude. Totally fine. Yeah, it's kind of like you were saying. It's like this initial atmosphere that hits that even games like Fatal Frame didn't really capture it. It was something about the way it was executed to me. And I think inherently all of us knew that right as soon as we saw it. And I think that still happens nowadays, seeing how active the Silent Hill subreddit is, and a lot of people being like, going in for my first Silent Hill 2 playthrough, like there's something specifically about that game that is crafted just so amazingly in that intro section that really grips you from the beginning.
Fucking game.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Dude, the Japanese covers of those games are so bizarre, but I do love that they have the producer name on it. It's like produced by Akihiko Imamura, I think it says on it.
Yeah, right down
Yeah.
the corner. Yeah. No, the first time when it was just about the atmosphere, I was just deathly frightened about, because it was the fear of the unknown. It was legitimately just that whole, I am uncertain of what I'm about to witness.
Yeah.
And that disconcernment does not want to, your fight or flight response kicks in, right? Like, all right, no, we're not. But after that initial shock was done, I got back into it again in university. And that's when I sat down and actually started exploring the psychological aspects of it, what the lore was about, what the story was about, what these motivations are, who is this character, who are these characters, what is this world, what does it mean, what does it signify? That's when I genuinely got into the world of Silent Hill. And I don't know if you can hear that, the ambulances.
Yeah, very slightly. Yeah, I think the other thing too about Silent Hill 2 especially is where it's not directly tied to 1, 3, or 4. It can be experienced as a standalone thing. And a lot of times if people ask me, as much as I personally don't rank it my number one because of that distance from the main story and what it's actually supposed to be about.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's this one.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's my personal favorite. I mean, I have an incredibly rare 2006 reissue of a wall scroll of Silent Hill 3 for a reason, but that's neither here nor there. It is it's one of those things where you can recommend anybody try it out, and you'll know within just a few minutes whether or not they're going to like it. And for me, it seems like people either dive so deep into it that they're obsessed with it for over a decade, like me, coming up on 20 years, to be honest with you, or they get a bite of it, they get a taste of it, they're like, yeah, this isn't for me. This is like the combat's clunky, it's not really catching me right away. Like Maximilian, dude, for example, did his first play just a couple years ago, and yeah, he got to the apartments and he's like, guys, this might be impressive for like early 2000s, but it's not really gripping me. And everybody in his chat was like, no, you don't. They're like, keep playing, you'll see. And then by the end of it, he was in tears on his stream. It's like it just does something. It does something emotionally that I think even 23 years after the fact, other games are still using it as a benchmark.
I think that's really what makes it so special and significant. Like, obviously, you and I have our predilections to which Silent Hill, is the superior narrative.
Yeah.
Just for the sake of, we've been playing it all our lives.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that Silent Hill 2 still resonates so well, kind of the same way that, art is supposed to. Like, good art, I mean, bad art probably does the exact same thing. I guess you can argue that.
Yeah.
But good art is something that is meant to elicit engagement, to elicit conversation,
Yeah.
discussion. And if something is truly that important and significant to you, that you're literally willing to go through every nook and cranny to expand on these bits of minutia, like not, you know what I mean? Not even the general narrative, which is just essentially Dostoevsky light.
Yeah.
Like, just what do the doors mean? Like,
Yeah.
what does the door frame in this scene mean? What is the choker that Maria's wearing mean? Like, everything has some sort of significant meaning that needs to be reevaluated and reassessed.
Yeah.
Good art makes you care. Good art makes you want to think about it more. I think that's what it's its staying power. I suppose.
Yeah, and I think just to speak on that a little bit too, it's kind of also coming down to the fact that there is a lot to explore, but also the way that Japan designs games, they are not, nothing is an accident. If you watch any behind the scenes, even modern day, like I'm a big fan of this guy's videos named Paolo from Tokyo. And he talks about like the day in the life videos of, game programmers and designers and art designers. They're so diligent about crafting every tiny little bit of art. And you can even see it in the behind the scenes of Silent Hill 2. Like, they were very, very critical of the way the characters looked. The lines on Angela's face had to be designed a specific way. Like, they drafted it several times. And the way that things turned out, there are no accidents. And I think that's kind of what's motivated people to look into so much minutia with this game of like you were talking about, like, what does the choker symbolize? Why does she appear at this point in the game? What do the eggs mean that the Pyramid Heads are holding at the end of the game? What do they symbolize?
Right.
But
And the fact,
on the other side of that, dude, I think people go too far with it, and that's where my main frustration with the community is they extrapolate things that are so ridiculous and so nonsensical to even have as a discussion. Twin Perfect famously said, "There's no need for a 7-page essay about the way James pronounces his W's, or the coat color that Walter Sullivan wears, supposedly symbolizing self. Get all that stuff out of here." No, like it creates all this positive engagement and I remember people like pulling the high res maps into PC engines and analyzing every little frame, but there's also this side of like, okay, this is just getting ridiculous and silly at this point.
You could say that we could we can talk about media literacy in the same way. I feel like media literacy in modern day is definitely significantly declined.
Yeah.
Where people think that they're having philosophical musings are really just being belligerent and nonsensical about whatever the fuck that is.
Yeah. Yep.
Yes, I do believe that there is a level of I don't know, philosophical expansion that you could sit down and discuss with these games, but I don't know. I think Ito's pretty cut and dry when it comes to, when he's on what the fuck is it called? Twitter. I'm just calling it Twitter. Screw it.
Yep. Until the domain name
or-
changes, I'm not changing either.
Exactly. People would talk to him and have the most just odd questions to ask someone
Yeah.
from a game that's, nigh on 20 plus years old about something that he doesn't even remember making. Like, not making, but like he doesn't. Oh yeah, I remember doing that part, but I didn't do the whole thing. What
Yeah.
the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, because he's the art person who just so happens to be the most active on Twitter, he has to field all the weird questions. And the most annoying thing that's got to be for him, he's literally going through Hideki Kamiya's arc, where Hideki Kamiya first discovered Twitter and he loved it. He's like, "Oh, this is so cool. I can talk to fans." And he was thanking fans constantly, smileys, all the time. He's like, "That's so awesome that you love my games." and everything. And then people started to come at him with these weird theories of like, why is this the way that it is? This doesn't make sense. And people trying to educate him about his own game. And now he just blocks people. He is so done with that shit. He just blocks you in an instant. And I swear Ito's going to go to the same eventually because he's so tired of it.
It's the social media equivalent of telling someone to take their top off. Like,
Yeah.
what is wrong with you?
Yeah. It's like, dude, people going to Masahiro Ito, a key art designer for all the first 3 games, and telling him why the snow is actually ash.
Oh God, no!
That
we're not getting into this, man.
Yeah. That shit. And every time he responds and just says another fan who spread the misinformation or something like that. And he keeps screenshotting that one area of Silent Hill 1 where you run into Kaufman and he says it's snowing out this time of year. He has attached that photo to so many like please stop saying this tweets over the years. It is unbelievable. I found at least 20 when I was making my first video about Silent Hill.
Hey Stamp, did you know that Silent Hill as a town was based on a town in Pennsylvania?
And the coal mine fire that never happened. Like, come on, dude. Like, this was shit that was propagated by the movie. It's like a 30-second little segment where Rose's husband, which is the Sean Bean character, he like does a little bit of research about Silent Hill and sees that, whoa, it was based on Centralia and there's a coal mine fire. And then there's the scene of her catching the snow in her hands and she does that and you can see that it's ash. Please stop with this shit, everybody. Like, it's not fucking ash. This is a movie only thing. You live near Centralia. That's actually really cool. I know the coal mine fire thing is real, but as it relates to Silent Hill, absolutely not. In the manual, you have the manual of Silent Hill too. It says Silent Hill New England, or it says somewhere in the neighborhood of New England is where it's supposed to be.
Yeah. It's supposed to be. It was supposed to be reflective of a local East Coast town.
Yeah,
it's written in the damn Book of Memories, man. Or what is it? Book of Lost Memories.
Yeah,
not the Book of Memories, not the PSP game.
Yeah, people even say it could be Maine because of the heavy Stephen King influence, and a lot of Stephen King's stories take place in Maine. Like The Body takes place in Bangor, Maine, and It takes place in Derry, Maine, because that's where he grew up.
A lot of them take place in Derry.
Yeah, and so that's kind of the general thought. And there's a lot of things throughout Silent Hill in general that are extremely Stephen King influenced, like the boiler explosion. It's basically lifted straight from The Shining. Absolutely. And then in Silent Hill 2,
his name is one of the roads on the damn old Silent Hill map.
Yep. And then not only that, the stairs leading up to the hotel, the angle was specifically set up to mirror the ending of the movie Pet Sematary. The exact same number of steps. The landing looks the exact same way. And yeah, so there's a lot of references to Pet Sematary. There's references to the boiler explosion. Even kids with psychological powers, you could say, is lifted from The Shining and other things that he's made. So
the corn too, I think. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. So
yeah.
While there is a heavy Stephen King influence, it makes perfect sense that they would set the story in Maine, and the way that the town looks. Like, people have done analyzation on different Maine towns, and you can tell that they did a lot of research into New England sort of architecture and structure of different towns and different things. So
kind of reflects Connecticut more than anything.
Yeah, like it could be Pennsylvania, sure, but in reality, that was just something that was kind of thrown out there by the movie, and that's the beginning and end of it. Like, it has no bearing in the games.
Can we put that to bed? Can we put that to rest now?
Yeah.
Silent Hill, it's snow, not ash.
Yeah.
There's no coal mine fire. It's not even a coal mine fire in the goddamn movie. It's a lie, a perpetuated lie that the Gucci family. By the way, I have to say this out loud before we go any deeper in this, because I'm just gonna lose my.
Yeah. I'm
gonna whack out of my gourd by the end of this. You inspired me so long ago when you were doing your video essay series when you started, because it motivated me to do it myself. I'm still writing them, but that's definitely episode 2 for me. It's like I'm going through this deep dive into this movie. The first one, there's no way in hell I'm doing Revelation, but the amount of research that I wanted to go into was things like Gucci's character. We could have easily extrapolated that. Rose did not have to be married. If you wanted, if the studio, if TriStar was giving you shit about we need a male character in this story, make Rose single and give the prominent role to Gucci.
Yeah.
Like, why not let that be the issue? He's you think of all the all of the elements to it. His family is a prominent member of the community. They have their own shop set up there. Why
Yep.
not make him a default, a defect of the cult? Make him a defect of the Brethren.
Yeah, that
Make
would
him
that would have been more
something
interesting.
that would have been more fascinating.
Yeah, he's even
That
got
way
the
you have a parallel.
he's got the burns on his hands to prove it. So like they could have extrapolated on that and said, oh, he was performing some kind of cult ritual and maybe he had a change of heart at the end and that's why he decided to rescue her. Like that could have been the twist, but they just decided to, he's just a detective, I guess.
He's just like a guy.
Okay.
And the fact that Dahlia is so closely related, like Dahlia, in the flashbacks, Dahlia goes to him as if they knew each other.
Yeah.
Why not make it so that they? All right, I don't want to give away too much of the stuff I want to write about because then you won't watch the video. But
No, I'm gonna watch it either way because I'm the biggest Silent Hill obsessive in the world. So I watch any piece of Silent Hill content. I literally will search Silent Hill and just sort by recently uploaded and watch every video essay. That's how obsessed I still am to this day.
That's passion, and I respect the fuck out of that.
It's either passion or insanity, one or the other. I'm still trying to figure it out.
Step at a time, you'll get there. Don't worry about it.
Self-discovery.
Anyway, so I apologize for getting all poetic or intense.
No, it's weird, and there's also a weird interview with Christoph Gans where he explains why they went with a female main character, and he basically said that Harry Mason is a feminine person or something, and he's like, we didn't think that the way that Harry conducts himself is very masculine, and so we decided to go with a feminine character. It's like, dude, the whole game is
like
about
caring about your kid is totally a chick thing, right?
Yeah, that's what's weird. It's like he's assigning these basic parental behavioral attributes to being a woman. It's like, dude, the whole game is about how he wants to find his daughter so much that he doesn't care what happens. He's willing to go through literal hellfire, all these demons that these formless shapes of demons that he's never seen before, and fight through all this nonsense just to find his daughter. Like, I don't think anything about that screams gender specific behavior. I think it just screams parental, protective energy. That's all it is.
When he does do these interviews and he talks about that, it's like, oh, when we wrote Harry, we realized he's a woman. Like when he was doing that stuff, he always said that the themes came back to motherhood and matriarchy and witches. And it's like, the fuck are you talking about? First of all, if your theme is motherhood, you failed it tremendously. Because one, it's super reductive, and two, these are the dumbest mothers I've ever fucking seen on screen.
Yeah, they really have no regard for any form of safety. They do not give a single shit.
For family's well-being, like
Dahlia sold her daughter off to have the ritual done, and Rose doesn't even honestly. Yeah, she's looking for her daughter throughout the movie, but it's just not the same. It's not the same like guiding plot point. Once they run into the cult, the cult becomes the center of the story, right, much less than actually trying to find her daughter. And it just it screams to somebody who has very external, like ancillary knowledge of the games. And whenever they made that little presentation about him making the next Silent Hill movie, they're like, oh, Christoph is a true gamer, he loves these. I'm like, dude, he's gonna make all these fucking random creative changes to the next movie, and he's gonna justify it with the weirdest things, just like he did in 05.
And the fact that they keep going back to the fact that, oh, when I was writing the script, I was thinking about Orpheus, that's why I was thinking about the parallel between Chris's character when he went. I don't know why I'm doing this really corny French accent. I'm sorry. But he would talk about how Orpheus. I don't know if you've seen Orpheus. But I mean, for God's sake, it's obvious the man just wanted to do a Silent Hill 2 movie. Like it's obvious that the man just wanted to take that and just make a movie out of it.
Yeah.
All of the parallels, all of the little the nods to the game he actually wanted to do an adaptation of.
And if you look at his filmography too, like looking at his filmography, it's obvious that he's like, dude, you can't find anything. I'm not one to throw his filmography under the bus, but if you look at it, Silent Hill, the first movie, is really the only significant one on there. So it's obvious that he would be chomping at the bit to do a follow-up movie after all these years.
Brotherhood of the Wolf, because remember, before he was a director, I think he was a writer for a bit, and then he had dabbled in cinematography. That's why him and Dan Lautson are very good friends.
Yeah.
So when Brotherhood of the Wolf came out, I think that was his directorial debut.
Yeah.
Or or Necronomicon. Oh no, Necronomicon came after.
Yeah.
Brotherhood of the Wolf is like, that's what got him on the map, and that's how Davis Films got in touch with him. And I mean, I guess he was friends with the executive producers there already. But Silent Hill, I think, if you look at his filmography, there's a tinge of like, just misogyny in there. Like all of his main characters are always, they're very masculine, very powerful, very very matter of fact. And then there's this damsel in distress. There's always the obligatory nude scene where we see the beautiful sultry curves of the female form, etc. etc. The man has his tastes. I get that. Fine. And Silent Hill, I think, was the first time he actually said to himself, or rather, I think what he said to Roger, who's like, I gotta fucking write this whole thing. When he went to France, they're like, we don't have a script.
Yeah. And
so I think what he said to him was,
dude, the deviations from the game make no sense too. Like, why couldn't they just make something that was more faithful? Sean Bean would have been the perfect Harry Mason. Just go with that.
Yeah, why not just do that? It's right there. It's right there. And the fact that, like, fine. I honestly, I didn't mind if the theme was motherhood, and you wanted to go down that route in a much more emphatic way, or a much more intelligent way. The way you proposed your theme being motherhood and then going out of your way to just deliberately make these people complete morons kind of upends your theme.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but like the fact that there's so many easy ways you could draw parallels. I mean, just make Christabella Alessa's mom. Like, how fucking hard is that?
Well, it's hard. It is hard for people who don't understand the lore of the games. And it's something where I see this all the time. People say, I love Silent Hill. I'm a big fan of Silent Hill, but I'm too scared to play the games. So what are you a fan of? You're a fan of a weird movie that like takes all these creative liberties, and you're a fan of what? Maybe Book of Lost Memories? You like to read? Like, what does that mean to be a fan of Silent Hill? Yeah, and the memes. To be a fan of Silent Hill, you almost have to engage with at least the first 3 games. Otherwise, you're totally lost on what the story actually is. Mary Elizabeth McGlynn talked about that. She was the voice director for the God Awful HD collection. She's like, I love Silent Hill. I'm a huge fan of it, but I'm a scaredy cat. I haven't really played the games. So you don't really know what's going on at all. You haven't done any due diligence to find out what any of these things are about, because if you just look strictly at what the games give you, it's actually pretty straightforward.
And we also have to come to the conclusion that, Stam, Silent Hill story is fucking nuts.
It is. Yes, it is a very crazy story.
It's bonkers, and we have to just kind of accept that the story makes no goddamn sense sometimes.
Yep.
You were the god that birthed you twice.
Yeah.
No, that's not no.
Yeah. And the history, when you go into the church in Silent Hill 3, they give all the history of like these different cult deities that were worshipped. That's some crazy shit, because you have to think, like, is this just symbolizing things that real people had done, or are they actually discussing, these gods and deities that did all these different things? The fact that Silent Hill 4 gives you an alternate way to summon the demon. So this cult somehow has discovered 2 alternate methods to bring about the apocalypse. Like, yeah, there is a crazy story underneath all of this, but it doesn't have to be presented in such a wacky way, the way that the movies do it.
That's what it is. The fact that it's such a wacky story, and yet it has such a resonating appeal.
Yeah.
It does what it does so goddamn well. You can argue that it's the same thing with Lynch's films. You're not going to sit down and watch Twin Peaks Fire Walk with me, that opening scene with the woman in the red dress making these ridiculous gestures, but if you watch the whole damn film, it has a point.
Yeah.
There is a significance to the insanity. There's a method behind the madness, as it were.
Yeah. And that's a great point too, because you could argue that a lot of things about Silent Hill are as cliche and stereotypical as they come. Silent Hill 2, for example.
Yes.
Dude, spoiler alert, but everybody in here already knows, main character having any form of, regardless of how it was induced, amnesia, it might actually be the single most stereotypical trope in movie history when it comes to the sort of drama, whatever genre you would say that it falls under, psychological horror, anything. But it's executed so well that nobody cares by the end of it. And that's the thing, is you can repeat these same tropes that have happened a million times, but if you execute it in a creative way that is originally presented as an entire package, it can still be wildly successful. It just depends on how you go about it.
tropes and motifs in any sort of narrative are always going to come back to something that, oh, I've seen that before, I've heard that before. It
Yeah.
has everything to do with execution. It has nothing to do with it being a standard. Yeah,
Yep.
there are plenty of horror tropes. The last girl who's not the hot chick who gets to survive. That's a horror
Yeah.
trope.
Yep.
Well, how are you going to do it that's so significant and symbolic that it plays with the trope, but
Yeah.
it also does it effectively? I mean, if films can already do that, and if you can already do that, you've seen it being done in other forms and in other mediums before. Why can't you? Why do you feel like, oh, well, it's a trope, so that's why it's so tongue in cheek? Ha ha ha!
Yeah.
Like, no, that's you just not trying. That's you just passing it off as bullshit. You're
Yeah.
not trying hard enough.
Yeah, perfect example of what you just said is Terminator 1. You know, slashers had already made their mark. The final girl trope had already been around. It happened with Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Halloween and the first couple Friday the 13th movies. I Spit on Your Grave had already happened, and like Last House on the Left and all these different things. And here comes Terminator that has this veneer of, like the club in the movie would indicate, tech noir. It's like there's this combination of future technology while also film noir sequences shot late at night in Toronto. The way that it looks, the way that it's presented, the music is all very futuristic. But at the end of the movie, there's still an unkillable monster, an unstoppable killing machine chasing the final girl. So if you really take off the fancy, amazing veneers that the movie has, it's a slasher movie. And it's about as
Exactly.
basic of a slasher movie as they come.
It's all about the execution.
Yeah. And if you tell people that
And,
too, like everybody argues about Terminator 1 versus Terminator 2. I almost feel like the debate is as heated in the Silent Hill community between 1 and 2 because they're
Agreed.
presented so differently. Silent Hill 1 is more of a straightforward story about a cult that has brought about the apocalypse, or they're attempting to do so. This nightmare is being projected out, and it's very cryptic. You're kind of struggling, grasping at straws to figure out what Dolly is talking about, what is Harry Mason talking about. In 2, it's arguably more vague, the state of the town itself, but the story and what's going on with your main character is made way more obvious by the end of the game.
Right.
So they're presented in a
I guess-
completely different way, but they both are made up of cliches and tropes.
Exactly. I mean, the fact that the main character is this, this man, this individual searching for his daughter or his loved one, and going through this deluge of hellscapes and nightmare fuel in order to get to them, is in and of itself like this trope of a doting parent searching
Yep.
for their loved one. And in the second one, you think that that's what the game is trying to do again, but then as the game progresses, you realize that they've turned that entire concept on its side.
Yeah.
You can easily extrapolate it the same way. That same concept is there when you first start, but then as you progress, you realize that no, that's not what's happening. Something's different.
Yeah,
This is scary and unsettling.
And you can just play around with the timings of reveals and different things too, because the thing that makes Silent Hill 2 so interesting is the reveal actually happens about 2/3 of the way in. It's not like the Western games do, where it's like, oh, like Twin Perfect said again, it's like you get to the end, it's like, oh, I guess I forgot. Some people died, but I know everything now. Roll the credits, and then everybody just walks away. They hug it out, high fives all around, firm pats on the behind, and you're done. But in Silent Hill 2, the twist, if you want to call it that, or the reveal, really happens when the confrontation with Eddie is over, and you open your inventory and you go to the stationery, that the letter that brought you to town in the first place, nothing on it. So at that point, your brain is kind of scrambling, like, so what is this? Where did this come from? And then as you go to the hotel, obviously things are made even more clear. But even the hotel is not the ending per se. Like, you still have the Nightmare Hotel, and you pretty much know everything after the tape, but the game is still going. It's not the ending per se.
Yes, it's another way to explore his psychosis. Once you do have that reveal in the videotape, and you realize that oh, this guy did that.
Yeah.
Okay, and then not only that, it's no longer just, oh, I guess I forgot that I did that. It's now he has to hold himself accountable. He has to now process his actions and the cost of his loved ones. And now he has to process that, and you get to watch him go through that process the whole way through.
Yeah.
It's kind of like him coming to accepting his his role in this whole thing, and you get
Yep.
to navigate that with him. I think that's very interesting. You don't see that a whole lot of, especially in the Western games. They
Oh
never
yeah.
take accountability for it. It's just, oh, I did that.
Yeah, and in
Oops.
the Western games also had way less factors that determine your ending. It really just came down to how many enemies did you kill, and like, you know, these pathetic little, oh, choice A or choice B, be an asshole or be a great guy, and like that determines your ending. Whereas in Silent Hill 2, it actually analyzed the way that you play. Do you play at a low HP? Do you examine Angela's knife a lot? In that sense, you get a more suicidal ending, a very dark ending. Do you keep yourself at full HP? Are you very concerned about your HP? Well, then you get the leave ending. So you're not interested in that path, and you just want to leave with Laura and kind of continue your life afterward, even though it's going to be difficult. You know, are you extremely protective of Maria? Well, you're going to get the Maria ending. And, you know, that concept just was not executed very well before that. You know, there were multiple endings in Resident Evil, but again, it really just came down to, do you keep characters alive or not? So it was just,
Which ending is your canon to you?
yeah, absolutely. And then Shattered Memories had their whole thing about, oh, we're going to psychologically profile while you play. It's like Silent Hill 2 already did that, and it did it better because it didn't have to tell you that it was happening.
Wait, I think you misheard me. I said which ending is canon to you?
Oh, yeah. So me personally,
Inquisitively.
I would say In Water, but that's just because, you know, Guy C, he obviously had a famous post about it. Now, Masahiro Ito has kind of clarified and said that we don't have a canon ending and never have. He's like, if we wanted one singular canon ending, we would have designed it that way, and we wouldn't have made multiple. But, you know, just based on the Silent Hill 3 and 4, the way they talk about in Silent Hill 3, Douglas says, you know, I was there once on a missing persons case. We never found the guy. If he were to leave with Laura, whether or not that was a projection or, you know, whatever that happens to be in the leave ending where he's walking away, if it's real or not, I feel like, you know, it just makes the most sense that he would not escape the town or wouldn't leave even on his own accord.
Agreed. No, on the same boat as you. In Water is definitely what I think is the most just rational conclusion to that entire experience.
Yeah, and this is a perfect segue too, because that ending, a lot of people justify it by a concept in Japanese culture called Shinju. And that concept just speaks to basically if you've brought so much, if you've done something that is reprehensible, considered reprehensible as far as community goes, and it's seen that your family cannot recover from the public, you know, shame that it would bring upon them, that is something that culturally is accepted. You know, I mean, I wouldn't say it's widespread acceptance of something so dark, but, you know, it's something that families have done in the past. You know, it's not that it's a completely fictional concept.
It's not a modern occurrence, but
Yeah.
it happened enough for them to make another word for it.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so it would make sense that, you know, like Guy he said, he completes that ritual, and, you know, that's why there's no answer as to where he ends up after that game, you know. And that also lends itself to the whole Silent Hill as purgatory explanation, where you find those notes in the beginning of the game next to a corpse that, of course, looks like James. And it says, I saw those demons. I know they were there, but my friend who was right next to me said he didn't see anything. So how is that possible? Does it mean that what I saw was an illusion? So, you know, they're playing all these mind games throughout the whole thing. And regardless of which ending you get, it's still, there's a lot of, you know, creative liberty being taken. And you have to kind of fill in, what do you think happened after the events of 2? Because we're never told anything concrete.
Exactly. Which takes me back to my original point, where good art elicits this kind of engagement with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You want to know more, but it doesn't offer you a concrete conclusion. It's something that you can entertain independently. And I love that. That means that you did what you set out to do, was to create a great piece of work, a great piece of art that people still discuss for fucking decades after the damn thing was made.
And when the remake comes out, all these conversations, it's going to be like a fire starter. It's going to be like a lit match on a pile of lighter fluid. It's just going to be all over again. So, and you know, that I think also in 6th gen specifically, there was something about Japan's development style in 6th gen horror where they wanted to explore things that were more than just jump scares, and they wanted to explore things that were more than just these tired ass concepts of monster chasing you, like Clock Tower had the scissor guy Alone in the, or I can't remember if it was that or Alone in the Dark, but it was one of those two
No, that was
series.
Clock Tower. Clock Tower had the Scissor Man, yeah.
Yeah. And, Silent Hill 2 is one of those, and, you could say 1, 3, and 4, where the monsters do have symbolism behind them, but the environments are also just as important. It's all representative of a much larger picture of things that have either already happened or are happening concurrently to the characters that we're playing as.
Right.
And it's like you said, that you can turn such a wacky concept as, you could argue, like some people think the cult is like a soap opera, especially the way that Claudia and Vincent talk in the third game. It's like all this drama about who's funding it and siphoning money off and all these different things. But they managed to turn such a wacky concept into a very seriously crafted story that you can tell is not a parody of itself. And that kind of is what lends itself to these types of conversations.
Absolutely agree. 100%.
And, these conversations, like I said, they're going to be continuing well into the future. If anybody takes a cursory glance at the Silent Hill subreddit, people are going at each other's throats day in and day out about these things and what they think Silent Hill is and what it most likely is based on what developers have said. But I think the beauty of it is ultimately that we don't know for sure. And it's something that we can continue to analyze. Yeah, absolutely.
I just get a big bag of popcorn and just watch the vivisection of the community just in real time.
Yeah. Oh man, whenever that presentation happened and they revealed all the new projects, like people were taking the smallest, how people do. It's like, oh, Easter eggs in the trailer you might have missed. People were just taking the smallest little tidbits and like, are they going to retread old ground by doing this again? I'm like, guys, while I understand why you're saying this is literally a trailer / proof of concept. We know nothing about this. Let's just stop the
QAnon shit.
Yeah. I mean, it was literally JFK levels of conspiracy. It's like, oh, Silent Hill Townfall has a line about punishment. Does that mean they're going to go back to the Silent Hill 2 style of storytelling? It's like, it's one word, dude. That could mean so many different things as far as a story. Like, just stop it, please. Well, anyways, I guess that would lead into my final question about Silent Hill, which is, do you think that Konami can come through on any of these new projects?
No.
I don't think so either.
Was that fast? That was too fast, wasn't it?
Nope. No, that's exactly how I feel, dude. I would just give a solid, definitive no, period, end of story. I think they're too interested in business. They're too interested in monetizing mascot characters like Pyramid Head and James. And I think it's only a matter of time before we see all those characters in Fortnite, for God's sake.
You mean they're not already? I thought they already were.
Well, they have the sneaking pack. It's got Solid Snake and Raiden in it, so they've already got Konami property in there. It is,
or
yeah.
You got Cheryl doing the floss dance. Like, come on, man.
Oh God, it's gonna be James doing the punishment. It's gonna be his dance where he just like does the fucking the Running Man, and then a little effigy of Pyramid Head pops up behind him. They're gonna do the dumbest shit, dude. You already know that.
Oh, God. Hey, you said that you had fun streaming Fortnite the other day, though.
You
did say that you were enjoying yourself.
Oh yeah, I had to eat crow because for the longest time I thought it was the most generic shooter ever, and while it is pretty generic, I genuinely think it's a fun game now. So I'd be fine to like squat up and go back and play with some people next time. Well, since we've talked so much about Japanese media, specifically Silent Hill and different things, that's kind of what I wanted to get into with you. I know you talked a little bit about, doing an art degree in university, but what led you ultimately to living in Japan? What attracted you to it in the first place?
I've always been fascinated with living here ever since I was a kid. I grew up watching, old black and white anime, Tetsuo no Tomu, way back when, Tetsujin 23, old stuff on my old, we had a rotary dial TV when I was a kid.
Yep.
And that stuff would come on just on broadcast TV. I mean, it was dubbed, obviously, but it was that old school stuff, and I just kind of was so fascinated by it. At first, I didn't know that it was originally from Japan. I just saw these stories were, like, significantly different in terms of presentation, pacing, and structure. And then when I did realize that they were from Japan, I started just absorbing as much as I humanly could.
Yep.
The stuff back in the 90s was, that's where I come from. That's my wheelhouse. old school stuff from primarily stuff like Pat Labor. So key artists and key animators like Okiura Hiroyuki and I guess Oshii Mamoru just for good measure. All that old stuff, Ghost in the Shell, Akira, Robot Carnival.
Love it. Yeah.
That that old Cyber City 080, 808. That shit is where I come from. And it was always just something that was fascinating to me. And as I was going to art school, even in high school, I was finding other like-minded individuals who were interested in the same stuff, and we were all into it. We were all into Japanese animation, especially even then it was Gundam, and then it was starting to find its way into the mainstream.
Yeah.
In at least in my community, you had your Tsunamis, you had your Adult Swims, right? So people were getting exposed to a lot more of the newer stuff that I already seen because I had nerd friends. We'd all hang out at the video store and pick up whatever we could find
Yeah.
in the bargain bin, and just kind of consume it all. But I always knew that I wanted to be an animator, or I always wanted to be like a manga artist, and I if it's not obvious already, I was a bit of an outcast as a kid.
Listen,
So-
only the outcasts sat in the comfort of their own home completely alone playing Silent Hill 2. So I'm right there with you. We're all kindred spirits in that way.
It was way too comfortable, is why I stopped. It's like, oh, this shouldn't be so familiar.
Yeah.
I need to turn this off right now. Yeah. So when I did decide after university that that's what I wanted to do, I did my degree in illustration. I primarily wanted to go into industrial design because there's a career in there in product design. It's a it's a big industry.
Yep.
But the one thing that just turned me off about it, well, first of all, like I can't make 3D proof of concepts for shit. These hands were not meant to do wood making. Like
Yeah.
no, metalsmithing maybe, but we're not doing wood. I can't fucking get a mortise and tenon to like properly get together. I'm awful at that shit. But ultimately, what turned me off from product design was that it was a solutions based industry.
Yeah.
I'm all about story. I want to tell a story. So I switched to illustration, and I did some like I majored in illustration. I did like some minor classes in FAV. So I took a couple of animation courses and film courses and whatnot. And yeah, obviously I did my CG, which is what I do now.
Oh, you do
And then
CG now?
Yeah, I'm an artist and animator.
Oh, that's really
We
sick.
didn't talk about that yet. Oh,
Yeah.
You didn't ask me what my job was, so I just didn't bother.
That's true. Yeah, I was like, whoa. But no, that's awesome, dude. Keep going. I'm literally fascinated by this because I've been obsessed with Japanese culture for a long time too. So
No, when you were talking about how Japanese studios are so meticulous about their production, it's like, bro, you don't know. You have no fucking idea.
yep, yeah,
Well, I can get into it later if you want me to. But yeah, when after university, and I said, well, I did a study abroad in Kyoto, and I was there for 2 years, so I got to be exposed to actual manga artists that were already in the field, or as what do you call them? They had the tenure at the university, so you could sit down and talk with them about your ideas, your thesis, etc. So I got my work looked at like by folks I got to meet Murakami Takashi. I don't know if you guys or I don't know if I'm not even looking at the chat because the chat like glitched out on me, so I don't know who's talking. Is there anybody who's like from my chat say? I'm just want to say hi.
yeah. Somebody already said. A couple people have already said they dropped you a follow. So
No, thank you. Anyway, what was I saying? I'm like all over the place. I studied in Kyoto Seika for 2 years. I got to meet Murakami Takashi, who's I guess if you're familiar with he was the artist who did the Louis Vuitton bags with the bear on them.
oh yeah. I remember that being a huge deal for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, and what was it? He did a Kanye West cover album.
Oh,
or album
Graduation.
cover. Graduation, yeah. that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
I got to meet him, Takemiya Keiko, who did the manga for Cherry. So I've had I've had a lot of influence, and I'm so grateful to have these experiences and these opportunities. And I'm like, I can't squander this.
Yeah.
So after I graduated, I moved to Tokyo proper, and I did all the mob job shit, and then I finally got a gig as a technical writer at uh, at a CG rendering company, and then I upgraded to artist, and then we'll talk about the job thing later. But yeah, this has been my career path the entire time, and fuck me, it's not easy. There's nothing
Yeah.
easy about any of this. But yeah, ever since I was young, it's always been, yeah, I know where I'm going, and I was more than willing to leave my old life in the States behind, and I was way more comfortable with it because it's like I can kind of start over, knowing who I am, knowing
Yeah.
who I am now. I didn't know who the fuck I was as a kid, and I was desperately trying to navigate that and figure that out in a sea of indifference and antagonism. So I was more than happy to walk the fuck away from that nightmare.
Yeah, speaking to cultural differences of the U.S. and Japan, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head already. Is like in the U.S., if you're very driven by a singular goal, a lot of times people tend to shun you for that. I don't know what specifically the deal is with that. Whereas in Japan, it seems like there's more of a culture around fostering that interest, and there may be less opportunity in terms of what's available to you to get to where you want to be in the end goal. But like you said, if you say growing up in the States that you want to work on anime, on manga or anything like that, people laugh. They're like, "Oh, you're a nerd. Yeah, you need to pick up a basketball. You need to go hit the gym." For some reason, there's just this culture of shunning your interest. But when you actually go, like you said, you went to the country of origin and you found that you were able to find this new identity for yourself. I think that's really, a lot of people are not willing to go that far. They're not willing to take that step to put that whole life behind them.
Exactly. And, that's totally fine. I was at that place in my life where I was more than willing to abandon all of these cultural expectations of me and start fresh. That was something that I was ready to, resolve myself to. There are plenty of people who obviously have lives back home where family values are important to them, or their friends, or maybe loneliness gets the better of them. It happens all the time out here.
Yeah.
There's a streamer that I used to follow who's an artist, or aspiring artist, and she'd quit her job and she just packed up and said, "I'm going to go to Japan." And then she was here at the beginning of this year. She said she wanted to try and figure out who the hell she was, and she found a little place, and she's like in Tokyo. She got like a modeling gig and this and that. 4 months after, she said, "I quit. I'm done. I can't do it." She just dropped out because she wasn't happy. She she was learning Japanese, so she very much was not acclimated to the language. Which I can only assume means that she wasn't acclimated to the environment or the culture either.
Yeah.
And that's totally fine too. Growing pains, they suck, they hurt. But in some instances, when you're an adult, you're not ready to go through all that again.
Yeah.
You're more than willing to resign to the reality that, okay, I have a life back home. I really can't do this. I can't upend my entire life and start anew somewhere where I'm not familiar with, something I have to literally start from scratch. Plenty of people are going to say that, like, yeah, I already have my world. Jumping from one place to another and starting from scratch is just something so daunting that I wouldn't be interested in pursuing that. I was different.
Yep.
I was more than willing to just say, "Screw this, I'm out," and that's what I did. And that's why I've been here this entire time, is because when you're trying to cultivate something like that, you have to start from nothing. You have to be willing to start from nothing, and I was willing to start from nothing. My bad.
No, you're totally fine. No, I was just blowing my nose.
Rattle on.
No, it's 100% true. When you look at the differences, I don't think they're polar opposite, like the US and Japanese work culture. I don't think they're polar opposite, but I think that Japanese work culture is very much lifelong commitment, is what I see. It's like a lot of these day in the life videos, I know that they're not representative of the culture as a whole, but you hear things all the time of like, this person works at a butcher shop, which was owned by his father and then was owned by his father. And it goes, 3, 4, 5 generations deep. Or ramen chefs who have perfected their craft over the years, or delivery people who, they have their coworkers that have introduced them to the industry and they've done it for 20, 30 years. Careers are not something where you see a lot of Japanese people switching career paths constantly the way that we do in the States, switching their major in university. You always hear like, I went to college to be a civil engineer and now I'm a civil engineer. Like, that's just the way that Japan works. So
It's definitely a constant. Things have definitely changed in the last decade or so. You have a
yeah.
lot more younger the younger generation isn't satisfied with the current work to life balance of Japan. So
Mhm.
they've been traveling abroad a lot more. But what they've been doing is they've been bringing those philosophies back with them when they do
Yeah.
come back. And so the paradigm has slightly shifted, but absolutely. It hasn't shifted enough to the fact where, everything's been upended and we have
Yeah.
to start the tapestry from scratch. It is very much a when I'm in this company, I'm in it until I die.
Yeah.
Whether it's my desk or not, this is it.
Yeah, whether I have to catch additional sleep under my desk to make sure that my heart doesn't explode, unfortunately. And that's the scary thing about it is like you were talking about the traditional way of Japanese workplace culture was, people would be hospitalized for overwork all the time. Cortisol levels through the roof, heart issues, lack of sleep, causing all kinds of other health related issues. And it is changing. Like I was watching, and again, I hate to keep referencing this one series of video and acting like it's fact, but I saw one of Day in the Life of an Office Worker, and she was working at a company called Pasana, I think was the name of it.
Hold on, yeah. It's like a banking company.
Yeah, and they were very progressive. They had an area that you could nap while you were at work. You got 2 15-minute designated naps throughout the day on top of your breaks. They only do 8-hour work days. They don't do the whole, incentivized overtime with no additional pay thing that a lot of companies traditionally will do in Japan. So yeah, I think the paradigm is changing, but the problem is old habits die hard, and a lot of the upper kind of board members of these companies, and we could even point to a gaming company like Nintendo. They're tenured. They've been there since the 70s, early 80s, and
Exactly.
they have one formula, and they are not going to deviate from that formula no matter what.
Everybody who's in there is like they go to each other's house for dinner. Like
Yep.
they're tight knit. They know each other's grandkids and shit. Like
Yep.
you're never gonna weasel your way in there. It's just not gonna happen.
Yeah.
There's something about okay, so when the world tour happened and everything ended, it shone a light on the Japanese workplace culture. They had to recontextualize everything and just kind of dig the roots out from under them and say, okay, well, we have to figure something out. We legally cannot be going outside. It's a mandate.
Yeah.
We can't go outside anymore, which means we can't go to our work. So remote work became a thing. And then when people caught wind of remote work, that was it.
Yeah. It arguably was the same in the States too, because, a lot of these companies, these Fortune 500 companies that were just so insistent on office cubicle environments, all of a sudden it was kind of revealed to them that, oh, we don't even have to lease this office space. We can save all this money and everybody can just connect to a VPN from home. And it sort of ended up being a mutually beneficial, situation for some companies, obviously not all. But depending on the industry, it actually was very beneficial for people's overall happiness and that work-life balance.
Exactly. You'll see a lot more startups. I mean, Pasana's not a startup, but they
Mhm.
definitely have definitely a shift in management now, I'm assuming, or executive
Yeah.
management. So that's probably why they're adopting these new philosophies. But startups that are starting now are definitely, going in that direction as well. They see that their employees are not just, slaves.
Yeah.
They're not there for the sake of the company. You're providing a service to the company with your employment. That's how we thrive. That's how we flourish. And that philosophy is now becoming, or it's now being adopted by younger, more tenacious business owners. So, I mean, that's something to look forward to if you're ever interested in working out here. It's not, you won't die from your desk.
Yeah, that thankfully that stigma is starting to change. And it's interesting too because I see that it's not necessarily that more information is out there about it. I think that this younger generation is just not willing to settle for a position that's going to make them feel like there's an imbalance happening. We see it in America all the time. I hear this phrase from my friends if they're not happy, like, oh, it's called a job market for a reason. I'll just go look elsewhere. But in Japan, I don't know how the culture is set up. Is it more difficult to transition from one career path to another? Or do you really have to know somebody to make that happen on a frequent basis?
Well, I mean, it really depends on what your aspirations are in terms of a career path. If
Yeah.
you're doing something simple like arubaito, if you're just, working part-time just to make ends meet, you're going to college and trying to make something of yourself, No, it's fairly easy. If you're doing something like seishain, if you're going, in for work, if you're going to if you're doing shukatsu, like if you're, in the job market, so to
Yeah.
speak, like you're going to job fairs, you're in your suit, you're getting business cards, you're sending emails, you're getting your resume, your CV together. Yeah, the idea is the minimum amount of time you would probably want to spend in your early years looking for a career path. You'd want to stay at a company for a minimum of 4. A
Yeah.
minimum of 4 years. If you're not comfortable by then, you would be looking for other work whilst you're still working.
Yeah.
Um, and then once you've transitioned from one job to another, another 4 years, and then that cycle begins anew if you don't like that place. And then ultimately, inevitably, you'll find yourself in a situation where you've accumulated all of this experience. One of these companies is going to see what you've done. They're going to say, hey, we'll give you this, this, and a raise. And they're like, all right, cool. And then they just stick around. It's definitely not like the job market in the States, from what I can understand. There is definitely a shift in desire. It's not so much what type of job you want to do.
Yeah.
It's more like what can the company provide for you as an employee. There's definitely a shift there, and I think that's very interesting. It should happen a whole lot more. Take these fucking venture capitalists for all they're worth. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean,
But
the investment money that they were putting into their office space, it can be used to provide better accommodations like spaces for naps. I mean, people undervalue how important that is throughout the day to keep your organ function and your brain function optimal. And
Exactly.
there's I saw like Pasana, for example, has an entire convenience store inside the office that you can go to, and if the
A lot of
more
places actually.
accommodations. Yeah, it's amazing. The more accommodations you build into an office space, the more likely people are going to gravitate to work for you anyways. So it's always a worthwhile investment to make your employees' life easier.
Like, there's a whole other dynamic about othering too. Like
Hmm.
there's a I don't really want to get into it because we'd be here all day.
Yeah.
But when you're a part of this work culture, this work environment in a Japanese company, they do the whole you're here because you're family kind of thing, where like
Yeah.
you'll all take trips together. That was one of the things that I did at my old company. We went on a 2-day team building
Exercise.
excursion.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was a whole like thing, man. Like so we
Yeah.
ate dinner together, we did team building exercises together, we did the onsen together. When you see your I know this will just never happen in the States, but the minute you see your coworkers naked, I mean,
Yeah. Well,
like
the social
oh,
barriers are all just shattered at that point.
yeah, and so, it's either you're here now. This is this now.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's definitely not something that I mean, not in a legal sense, but depends on the company you work for. There are plenty
Yeah.
of lecherous individuals who definitely want to see their coworkers naked, but it's not in the setting that I come from.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway,
That's actually, you mentioned the team building excursions and exercises, different things like that. I feel like that's actually lacking in American culture. A lot of times you don't see outside of a very select few individuals in an office environment, maybe like all going to lunch together occasionally, sometimes going to hit up like a local bar, sports bar on a Friday night or something. But
yeah, yeah,
I think it is very crucial to the success of a team that everybody understands each other on a level where uh, there's not this professional set of barriers, amongst
mm,
everybody. Like, obviously, I'm going to treat somebody totally different sitting here on this podcast versus in my business casual, doing my IT consultation. So, I think it's crucial to the success of a strong team. And I think it really does help to do those things. It just depends on the way that they're executed.
exactly. There's always a line where it's like, yeah, it's really great that I get to drink with my boss, but it turns out my boss is an alcoholic, so he drinks every night. I
Yeah.
can't do that.
Yeah.
But it's something it's hardwired into Japanese work politics. When the boss goes out to go drinking, you go drinking.
Yep.
It is a mainstay. There's a great article that came out recently on my Shimbun where like 60% of Japan or Japanese workers, the working class, hate go something called hanami, which is like cherry blossom viewing
Oh,
in
yeah.
the park. with their jobs because
Yeah.
it feels like fucking work. It's like you're
Yeah.
sitting down. What is like honestly, what else are you talking to your coworkers about except work? When
Yeah.
you're going out and sitting down and having drinks with the boss once in a while, yeah, sure, no big deal. You get to learn a little bit more. I did that when I, started working at that last job that I had. I sat down with my boss, the CEO, sat down, had a few drinks with him, got to know him a little bit. That built a bond. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Did I do it every fucking week? No.
Yeah. Because then
Absolutely not.
you would probably be in the hospital for liver damage. But yes.
Exactly. Which, it's a Japan thing, dude.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, and that's also true as well. You know, a lot of times the number one reason people quit jobs especially in the States is bad bosses. And I feel like,
Yeah.
that barrier can be broken down a lot if you meet the person outside of a work environment and you kind of understand why they are the way they are. Maybe somebody had, a background in their job and their kind of rise through the corporate ladder where they had to compete, like ruthlessly. They had to compete to get where they're at, and maybe some of that is still resonating in their head despite it not being necessary anymore. You don't really get a
There's
chance to
still
talk to somebody when you're in that 8-hour shift. You really just don't.
great. Yeah, of course you're not going to learn the intricacies of the psyche of whoever your
Yeah.
employer is, So yeah, in some instances it's an absolute advantageous thing to sit down and actually get to know, the inner workings of, who you're working for. It definitely worked for me because, when you do have that bond and you do have that connective tissue there, it's a lot less difficult to communicate. Because now you feel like you built a bond outside of just this one establishment that you both work in. There's something more there.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's also crucial to happiness too. I mean, if I know my boss on that level and we've kind of, we've leveled with each other, we've spoken outside of work, we've hung out once or twice, it starts to break down it starts to break down the supervisor direct report relationship that exists, and it starts to give you more of a human element where you can kind of understand what they need as far as their requirements from you, the deadlines that they're placing on you. And it's not strictly, yes, I'm your direct report and I'm responsible for X amount of work per week. And honestly, I found that whenever that happens, I'm more willing to work harder for those people because they spent that time outside of work with me. So it's mutually
Exactly.
beneficial.
It's all about communication, okay?
Humans are extremely social creatures, and I think opening up the door to less professional, corporate, censored, relationships amongst people is always a good thing. It's always going to make you feel more at home in a company.
I think when my boss is making a rocket ship in the shape of his dick, that's when I probably would resign.
Whoa.
I think that's the line.
Yeah, that, and honestly, I've worked for some bosses in the past that would probably do such a thing. They wanted no part. The biggest issue for me is power tripping, dude. Especially
Agreed.
if someone came from the very same team that I'm now working on and they became the supervisor, and then all of a sudden they start to, things are working perfectly fine and we're hitting profit and plan and all these different goals that the company has set for us. We're hitting them just fine, but this person comes in with like this gung-ho desire to prove that they can be the best supervisor ever, and they start trying to implement policy change, and they're like, oh, I'm here now, so things are going to improve. And it's like, dude, they were already working fine. All you needed to do was just maintain what was already going.
Some people get that megalomaniacal bent the minute they get like a modicum of power.
Yeah,
They
an
just take it to
inkling
its
of authority.
unnecessary extreme.
Absolutely. Well, you did mention that you work in CG, and I'm fascinated by that. So my question would be, what are some things that people don't take into consideration about the type of work you do, and what's the day-to-day like?
Okay. So how do I say this? The hours. For question one, the hours. People
Yeah.
don't take that into consideration at all. I'm gonna have to give a little bit of backstory here. So, um, I come from a traditional animation background, so 2D. CG was kind of a side, and I learned enough to do procedural work and whatnot. Modeling and rigging are still things that I can do to a degree, but I definitely don't consider it a strong suit. I'm very much more acclimated toward Houdini and procedural development and
Yep.
and Blender. obviously. So those were the kind of solutions, the computational and rendering solutions that we were utilizing in my workspace. So the company that I worked for had a contract with Telecom Animation. So uh, I was essentially brought on as a CG artist and worked with them.
Yep.
For four productions. Uh, in the span of about 4 years. Let's go with 4 years. I currently don't work there now. I'm currently in transition, as they say. Dude, you need a job. So, the honeymoon's over. I had saved up a wicked nice nest egg, which is why I was able to do all this.
Mhm.
But the honeymoon's over, and I got to get back to work, which means building a portfolio. And like I had said that I had a meeting the first time we tried to schedule the
Yeah.
podcast day, and that was for an interview screening. So
Okay.
fingers crossed that worked out.
Yeah,
But,
man. Good luck on that, because it sounds like you have a lot of really valuable experience. So it's just all about finding the right fit.
I definitely got. Again, like I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to do these things. Granted, I suck at all of them, but having the opportunity to suck at them is something that you can only really dream about. I'll talk about the productions I worked on themselves in a bit, but the day to day was very much, again, the end of the world happened, like right when I
Yeah.
started working at this particular place.
Yep.
So remote work became the standard, but then I would go into the studio like twice a week, because I'd have to sit down with the art director for the projects that I worked on. And then for the remainder of it, when I was doing remote work, that's when, I don't know, shit just. You mentioned before about how Japanese studios are so diligent. Yeah, it's because they don't fucking sleep, and they're all literally ill. The art
Yeah.
director would come in, everything hurt.
Yeah.
Like it felt like he was coughing up his intestines every time he would stand up and sit down. He was in the hospital more than he was in the studio. The majority of the times that we'd sit down and talk with him in meetings, he was always a cantankerous. He was a bastard, but he had such an just a wellspring of information and knowledge and know-how. It's like it's kind of hard to not respect him. The man was a magnificently, just a magnificent dick, but a genius. Like meetings that would be. I don't know if you know this about Japanese work politics, but there's a meeting about the meeting we're gonna have about the meeting that's next week, where we need to schedule a meeting for a meeting.
Yep.
That's the majority of the day. The majority of the work comes after lunch. But the meetings that we would have with our art director in the studio, and all of because we were exclusively working with developers from AMD,
Yep.
working on their flagship ray tracing engine, Radeon ProRender, which was used in a lot of the productions that we were responsible for, collaborating with Telecom, and hours, a meeting that would take 30 minutes, 4 hours with this guy.
Yeah.
It was torture. It was torture. And then when I started going to the studio outright, because the CG artist department was just me and another guy. It was just the two of us. We were the only folks in this one particular company that had the contract assigned to us to work with them. He was working on other stuff, other releases, and then I was focused on the stuff that Telecom was working on. And I remember when we were doing the project, two of the projects that I did got released. One of them was a Shenmue anime, and the other was a project that didn't get released for, let's call it political reasons.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was gonna say various. There's a lot of different reasons why something wouldn't get released, but when you lay it down like that, I totally remember.
There's definitely a. It was good, and it was the one that I worked the hardest on, and it was the one I was going to get my credits for. I got my credits for Shenmue, obviously, the one on Adult Swim. So I can put that on my resume, which is nice. That's neat. I have that now. And then the other two projects I worked on, one of them. Oh wait, that was the one that got released. It was a Japanese exclusive thing, like Kawagoe Boys thing. I didn't get credited for that, but no one in my department did. Because it was another company that they subletted the work to us. They subcontracted us to do it.
Yeah.
And I was just working on cuts for that. And then one of them, I didn't work on it. but I did get my hands on the assets, and I was in a lot of the meetings for the character designs, and it was for the Lord of the Rings animation that's gonna come out, I think this year or next year.
Oh, that's awesome, dude. Yeah, the Shenmue anime I never got a chance to watch, but man, Shenmue 1 and 2 especially are I think they're two of the best games ever made. So
Oh yeah, the games are great. The anime's shit, don't watch it. But
listen,
I can say that confidently because my name's on it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, spoken from the man who's on the credits. I got to take that. I can't take it with a grain of salt. I got to take that as reality. So,
But yeah, I worked on yeah, those are the 4 that I worked on. And when we got to the remote work aspect of it, oh fuck me. It was borderline torture. And I'm not
Yeah.
talking about like, oh, you know, it's final crit day in university, you're 3 hours in, you're on a caffeine binge and you're crying in the corner. I'm talking about vomiting in the bathtub because it's closer than the toilet to get back on a 7+ hour call with your art director faster.
yeah,
That's how bad it was.
yeah,
Regularly. We got it done, but crunch is real. That shit, they're not lying when they talk about crunch in these game dev studios.
yeah.
It's real. It's not normal, but it's normal here. It's
Yeah.
very, very normal here.
Yeah, and
So,
you know that what you're talking about with your art director, I've experienced that too. It's like somebody who's in his position has the ability to sit on a meeting for that long and spill about all the things that he wants to do, but it's like he is so passionate about that specific aspect of his job that he doesn't realize that all of you guys are being pulled from your deadlines to sit in on that, and you have to make up like that time you don't get that back. So you have to
get that back.
Yeah, you have to then go and crunch to finish what you just got 7 hours taken from you to finish.
It's like, you know, he was going to sit on a call for 4 hours straight. It's like, dude, you do realize that we still have 13,000 frames left to render?
Yeah.
I need this computer.
Yeah.
And so, like, you know, he's mellowed out since then. He got married last I heard about him. So, you know, good for him, I guess. I'm happy he's definitely found his center now. I guess that's all he really needed.
Yeah. Well, you know, creative types, you never really know what you're going to get. Because, like, I encountered a lot of creative types in my life, and some of them are kind of like what you're describing, where they're just so passionate about something that they could talk endlessly about it. Sometimes to the detriment of other people. It can always be like a bit of a vampire where they're just monopolizing everybody else's time to discuss this. But at the same time, you know, they have such a vision that they're tasked with heading the project for a reason. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, but it's like the end product usually ends up being very, very good because of it.
That's the bit. It speaks for itself because it's like you see all of this work, all of this collaborative effort, but
Yeah.
these very meticulous and borderline, you know, lunatic minds coming
Yep.
together and manifesting this piece of work. And yeah, I mean, yes, you can argue that, you know, the thing that comes up on screen is just kind of like, you know, a labor of love and it was well worth the effort and whatnot. But I'm kind of at the conclusion, or I'm kind of at a place in my life now where I kind of want to do it at my own pace.
Yeah.
The amount of work and the amount of time that goes into these large scale projects is very much bent to the whim of you know, a pre-existing market, a pre-existing niche. Is this going to make its money back? Animation is expensive. Everybody knows this. You know this. I'm pretty sure the chat knows this.
Yep.
Animation is an extremely expensive medium. It's an extremely expensive industry. And they're throwing millions of dollars at, well, okay, millions of yen. Let's go with the yen.
Yeah.
And they're throwing millions of yen at this thing, and they don't know whether it'll make its money back. The majority of the time, unless there's a pre-existing fan base that's there to gobble it all up, gobble up all the merch, which the animation studio itself has nothing to do with. They don't make any of that money. The company that's responsible for the IP makes that money.
Yep.
You know, so it has everything to do with, is it something you want to do? Like, it's at this point in my life, I have no other choice. Like, I can't go to like I can't go to like construction. I can't go to a construction company and say, I'm your man.
Yeah. Look at all this CG experience I've got. Look, dude, my hands are prepared. Let's get this done.
You know, right? I guess I could probably pick up CAD real quick. You guys need a CAD guy?
Architecture, let's go.
But yeah, it at this point in my life where I'm so dead set in this career path, I really don't have an alternative. I have to figure out a way to make it worth my while as well. I'm
Right.
kind of over working for other people's dreams, and I kind of want to sit on my own for a bit. I know you can't see any of it, and you probably there's a ton of stuff in here. That's because it's a studio, obviously, and
Yeah.
I assure you, none of this is set dressing. Like these things have 10 years worth of wear and tear to them, and
Yeah.
they've been put to task.
Yeah.
But the point is that I really want to figure out this way to actually create something again, like which is why I was so inspired by you. And I know I'm going belligerent and blabbing on and on about.
No, that's exactly what I wanted to hear, man, because we've never really got to have this conversation before. It's not really possible, in chat to really express all this and verbalize it and get it out there like that.
It was I think it was when it was the first time I think I saw you. This was before you were making your YouTube content, but that was definitely the final straw. Where I'm like, yeah, I gotta do
Yeah.
this too. 'Cause you were playing Silent Hill 2. I remember exactly. You were playing Silent Hill 2, and you were at the end of it, and you were, you were waxing nostalgic about the first time you started streaming, about how Silent Hill was it Silent Hill 3 or Silent Hill 2? Was it
Mhm.
the first game that you were able to stream on your brother's PC?
3. Yep.
It was 3, yeah. And I just remember you just being so emotional and honest about that experience and how much it meant to you.
Yeah.
And it was that very visceral vulnerability that just really just made me respect the hell out of you. And then I'm like, I want to, I wanted to have that kind of an emotional effect on someone with my work at some point. And then you started making your work, and I'm like, I really need to get into this fucking YouTube thing again.
Yeah. Well, hey, listen, man. Sometimes you do these streams and you throw things out there and you don't really know what it does as far as impact or what people resonate with it. So, sometimes when I do things like that, I'll end the stream and I'm like, that was kind of a fuck up. I shouldn't have done that. But I really
No,
appreciate hearing that type of thing because, like I said, sometimes you just throw stuff out there and you don't know what the reception's going to be like. But yeah, it's been extremely instrumental. I mean, obviously the fact that I'm still making YouTube videos about it, still talking about it. We had a great conversation about lore and structure and story and different things about Silent Hill today. So yeah, it's just something that it's like, you with animation, Silent Hill is just something that has been ever present in my life ever since I was extremely young. So, it's something that pretty much any time a conversation gets fired up, I'm going to be there ready to talk about it. It's just how it is.
and I'll be right here to react to it.
I appreciate that, man. And these podcasts too are extremely valuable because, like I said, we can't really, Twitch has a character limit for chats. We can't really have these sort of in-depth conversations, even amongst, even if we're doing a dedicated stream to talk about these things. You guys are still limited in what you're able to say because it has to be condensed down to these easily, accessible anecdotes. And I think what the beauty of this show is that we can cover so many different walks of life, and we have already. Like, dude, your story is incredibly unique, even amongst the people that I've interviewed so far. And it's inspirational for me too, because you took the fucking plunge, like majorly. You said, fuck it, I'm going to the source. I'm going to Japan because that's what I want to do, and you did it. So, there's a lot of people that would be envious of that ability to step outside of your comfort zone and just make things happen for yourself.
After I got my degree, I got that screen of James sticking down the hole, and will you go down the hole? And
Yep.
I had to. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. Sometimes you just have to jump down it and you don't know what's going to be down there. You know what? You could have moved to Japan and been like, whoa, this culture shock, this shit is not for me. I'm on the first plane back to the States. This is not for me.
Absolutely. And I guess I don't know. It happens for everyone.
Yeah.
You're not. I'm not beholden to it exclusively just because I've consumed media and culture through a very myopic lens. That's why I'm so fascinated about Japan. I've
Yeah.
had sushi at a local sushi bar in in Northeast Rhode Island. Like
Yeah.
no, it's not the same thing. And there's so much that's not spoken via words. There's a communicate. I would say it in Japanese, but I don't think it really matters. But there's a kotowaza essentially in Japanese that says there's communication you speak with words and there's communication you speak with actions. Um, the behavior of those who communicate simply with words, it's not enough.
Right. Yeah.
You build. There are things that you don't say. It's like listening to jazz. It's about listening to the notes that you don't hear.
Yeah, the space between is
The notes that they're
arguably
not
as
playing.
important as the notes being played. Yes, absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
So,
no,
yeah.
100% I agree, because it's something where, you look at somebody's path in life and you can pretty much build a strong idea of what inspired them. You have these people that work in IT, you can tell that they probably grew up in an IT-centric environment, especially nowadays where people grew up their entire lives with a computer in the house, with internet. Even going back to like the mid to late 80s, that wasn't necessarily a possibility. So, people who grew up tinkering with IT, maybe nowadays they are consulting for companies or they're doing hardware, software troubleshooting for clients. So, looking at somebody's path in life and the plunges that they were willing to take, like you said, jumping in that, I mean, for a lot of Americans, including myself, moving to Japan is one of the most daunting things imaginable, because you hear all these stories about xenophobia, which I don't think it's nearly as bad as people let on, because all the videos I've seen of foreigners traveling to Japan, it's like that seems to just be an urban legend. But, you just hear all these stories about how difficult it is. But it's like, look at you, dude. You went there, you had a dream, you made it happen. And, you have these projects that you can put under your resume and your belt now. And that's huge to see.
I think that was one of the questions that you were going to ask, was like, what do you think is like the most important thing about content creation?
Mhm.
Especially in modern, especially in the modern landscape.
Yep.
And I was going to just say consistency. It's so easy because, back when I had my show, and the world, kind of got the better of all of us, and we just kind of had no choice but to end it.
Yeah.
It's not that we were just kind of at it for a couple of months and then dropped it. We were doing that shit for years. We really believed in it,
Yeah.
and just kind of teetered out. And yeah, you kind of get a little, you feel a little defeated, you feel a little forlorn for that, but then
Mhm.
it depends on whether or not you're willing to keep at it with something new. I mean, do you want to continue to do these kinds of things? Does it matter to you? Are you passionate enough? And no, you don't have to answer all those questions right away, but if you see yourself not doing anything at all, it's like you don't want to try. So consistency, I think, is extremely important. Keeping at it and always at it. And even if it's 10 minutes, if it's 15 minutes, if it's something that you care about and it's something that matters to you, I think it's important to indulge in that passion.
Yeah, I think it manifests itself in so many more ways than content creation. We hear about albums, and all the time we hear about movies, albums, different things that people didn't necessarily believe in when they came out. Like you watch the behind the scenes of the first Star Wars movie, and they're just roasting George Lucas. They're like, nobody's gonna watch this shit. Nobody's gonna care.
Yeah.
Lo and behold, it comes out and becomes arguably the number one franchise in human history in terms of merch sales and movie ticket, box office sales, everything else. It's
cultural footprint, man.
yeah, absolutely. I think everything that has a certain degree of passion and understanding and a willingness to envision something and then translate it to a medium will eventually find its audience. And that's kind of that kind of leads into the question that I was going to ask, which is, content creation is so much legwork. And I think that it's so much legwork that it's very intimidating. Just in terms of what I do, I'm very lazy with YouTube, and I need to be better about getting my ideas to, my visual pen to paper, so to speak. But, just in live streaming, just in doing one podcast episode per week, I don't just have to spend the time live streaming. I have to create thumbnails for the stream VODs. I have to get the stream VODs uploaded within a timely fashion so that they're not, 30 days behind, so that Twitch doesn't delete them. So there's this constant engine that's running, and you have to be willing to maintain that on top of your full-time job and your other responsibilities. So content creation is not a summer project. It's a very driven, several year long process of building an audience, building out what your niche is going to be. And to your point, you can't just soft commit to something like this. You have to really take the plunge. And if you're willing to be consistent for years and years and years, even if the audience may not be the size that you think it should be, people will find it. And I think that's absolutely been the case with my stuff. And I'm extremely grateful for that too.
No, I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, honestly, the reason why I found you was because I was actively seeking out Silent Hill players, and then when and, it's easy to kind of just watch someone play Silent Hill. They're goofing off and making jokes, and like,
Yeah.
they don't know anything about the game in and of itself outside of, oh, this is the first playthrough, or why is this game so popular, yada yada.
Yeah.
But when it's you, I feel like there's something so much more romantic. Is it the word? Something so much more involved with
Yeah.
the way that with the way that you do this thing, and I feel like that's what kept me. Because yeah, anybody can play Silent Hill 2, but the way that you cultivate this audience and the people who gravitate towards you and your style of content truly has some significance. You're maybe lazy with YouTube right now, but the audience that you've cultivated here, who's genuinely interested in you, not just the games you play, but the way you play them, it means
Yeah.
that you've done something significantly more important, something more human, something more tangible. Not that I, advocate for parasocial relationships or anything like that, but
Yeah.
but you are a personality, and that's what people come to engage with. At least that's how I perceive it.
Yeah, one of my favorite interactions, and again, I appreciate the kind words for real, because a lot of times it's one of those feedbackless mediums. I hear from people like, oh, awesome stream usually, but it's just kind of they were being polite when they said that. So being able to hear like what it is that keeps people coming back is actually really new and interesting for me, because I never really hear this type of stuff. But there was a guy in my chat named Wrong Panda, and he's an older person, like we're talking like 70s, 80s age range.
Oh wow.
And yeah, he's in tune with technology. He used to work in TV production, and he had completely written off horror. He thought that horror was just a bunch of bump in the night bullshit. He thought that it was just big monsters chasing people and blood and gore and stuff. And we did an extremely in-depth playthrough of Silent Hill 2 on a Friday night, and that's one of my main tenets is like every time I play the game, yeah, there might be some jokes, but at the end of the day, I'm just trying to share what it is that makes this unique amongst its peers. Even now, I'm trying to show what's unique about it, show some minor details that people maybe have not seen or heard. I've done an absurd amount of research, so I think it's really fun to share those things for people who maybe haven't looked past the surface level of, is it scary or not, to see, look at all the work that went into this and all these different minor details you can discover. So by the time that stream was over, he dropped a super long message about, like, wow, I did not realize that horror could be this engaging. And he's fascinated by the other horror games that we've played because of that. So that's exactly what I want my stream to be. I just want people to share in the love and kind of the mutual understanding of what makes these games so unique and so impactful.
No, that's why we really appreciate you. I know I'm not the only one who thinks that. I'm sure everyone in the chat would concur with me that that's you do something special and significant for all of us, and that's why we appreciate you, and that's why we're here.
Yeah. And being able to
wanted to be on the podcast.
Yeah, man, being able to incorporate the podcast into this content has been so important, because the formula, as consistent as I was, the formula can get so tired after a while, and change is extremely healthy. And my formula for over 4 years now has been an hour of just chatting into a horror game. So being able to incorporate this, and like we were talking about humans being social, I love being able to level with you guys in more of a sense that I'm not just the person on camera and you're not just a chatter. I love having these conversations because now I understand so much more about your guys' motivations, your paths in life. And I've actually been like heavily inspired by everybody I've talked to just continue this and learn how to be a better interviewer and get really quality questions that are going to let us, have super meaningful conversations. So I definitely feel like it's been a healthy change, and I'm excited, moving forward to keep this going. Well, I guess, we kind of got to the serious stuff, but, I have some fun questions, and Dave has a really fun question for you. Do you have a waifu?
Yes, I do.
Do tell.
I mean, like a real waifu, or like a like Akihabara body pillow waifu? Wait, what was that?
The body pillow variant.
Oh no, Lord, no.
Oh
Oh
no.
God, no. I am not. I'm very, very sorry. I know that the modern age of anime is very much kind of waist deep in that moe culture.
Yeah, yeah.
And I didn't grow up in that shit, man. I detest moe with a fiery passion. It's just not my vibe. I know KyoAni does some great stuff. I know K-On was great. I know all that. Everyone loves that big eye. I'm just not. I grew up with the schlocky stuff of ADV. All right, like that's
Yeah.
the stuff I come from.
Well, Dave says I
Um,
withdraw my question, but yeah, at first the way you answered that so fast, I was like, "Whoa, where is this going, dude? What
God.
is he gonna
No, I
pull
thought he
out the
meant when
body
we're
pillow?"
married.
Yeah, but you are married in real life.
Yeah, I am.
Is she Japanese? Did you meet her there?
Yeah. I met her 5 years ago. At the old job that I was doing, where I was an art instructor, uh, out in the sticks, like in West Tokyo.
Yeah.
And I met her at a bar on the way home from work. I was really burnt, and I just could use a drink. And at the time, she was there was like this big like international exchange party going on.
Yeah.
And one of the tenant, I guess he was the organizer. He comes up to me. He's like, "Hey, man!" I'm like, "I have never fucking met you before in my life."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Hey, well, come hang out with us and have a drink." And I'm like, "Sure, why the hell not?" I mean, it had been a long day. I was just gonna
Yeah.
knock back a Long Island and head home. And so I got a Long Island iced tea. I sat down. Well, it was a standing table, so I
Yeah.
stood like at one of these tables, and she was across the way. She introduced herself. I introduced myself. We chatted for a little bit. I didn't stay long. I drank my iced tea and went home. Didn't think twice about it. I think over the span of a couple of months after that, I'd been seeing her more frequently. Um, this was definitely before the end of the world happened, before the world
Yeah.
tour. And I was trying to get myself back into just sketching shit. And I was drawing just random people like at the bar, but everyone was way too energetic and way too frenetic, so I couldn't like sit down and draw somebody. And her and I had been getting on fairly well at that point, and I asked her if it would be okay because I knew that she was also a bit of an artist. She was interested in
Yeah.
printmaking. And I asked her to sit down next to me and if I could draw her, and she said sure. And I kid you not, as I was drawing her, I slowly fell in love with her face,
That's
and then I asked her out.
that's awesome, dude. That is literally it's honestly one of those things where like you know that it's real because nobody would make something like that up. You know, you can literally just tell in the way that you tell that story that it's 100% legitimate. Drew her like his
That-
French girls, literally. Hey man, sometimes that's what you got to do.
It's just I remember that so vividly, and I just asked her if would you be like available for dinner, and she said yeah. And I remember this because it was around November,
Yeah.
towards the end of the year, and yeah, that's how that happened.
Well, congrats, man. That sounds fucking awesome. I mean, that literally sounds like a fairy tale to some people, I'm sure, but it's, Dave said, "Let's see the drawing." Did you save the drawing?
Oh, I have it. It's in another sketchbook. I don't have it like right here on my person. It's somewhere in there.
If you would be comfortable with it, I would love to like see that in the Discord. That would be so fucking awesome. That would be like the most hidden piece of future mute lore that we would love to see. I guarantee I'm not alone in wanting to see that.
If I could find it, I definitely have it, and it's not a great image. I was inebriated when I drew it, but
Yeah.
I mean, but that's what happened. That is straight up just what happened.
Yeah.
So if I find it, yeah, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
and here's a really fun one that I have enjoyed immensely talking with people. Do you have any paranormal experiences in your life, or specifically since moving to Japan, has anything kind of out of this world happened to you?
Oh, like have I met like a yokai?
Yeah.
Not to pull back the curtain, but I remember you said like, feel free to omit these if you don't feel comfortable talking about them.
Yeah.
It's not that I'm uncomfortable. It's just that I admittedly have not had any paranormal experiences like at all.
Yeah.
And if permit me to explain.
Yeah.
I am I'm very much one of those. I'm your dad. Like I remember you talking about it the other day.
Yeah.
That all that bump in the night bullshit. Yeah.
Yep.
this is what
Yeah.
you're talking
He has no patience whatsoever for people that even mildly believe in the paranormal. He's like, this is a scam. It's nonsense. Yeah.
Now, the reason why I believe that is because everything that I have ever experienced is that would be considered like, a strange occurrence or a strange like anomaly was always, just kind of explained away in a logical manner internally.
Yeah.
But then you have to understand that I come from sleep paralysis. Like I suffered from sleep paralysis during like a few 7 years back. Shadow people, whispers in my ear, you don't deserve to see, like that kind of shit. So this thing is the most fascinatingly horrifying object. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like this, I feel like this is genuinely the most powerful paranormal anomaly that I think I've ever experienced or could really kind of fathom. But I've never seen something externally. I've
Yeah.
never witnessed, strange floating orbs in a camera or anything like that.
That are definitely
So,
dust, but people try to claim that they're like a concentration of energy and all this other bullshit because they need their content for ghost hunters on sci-fi.
There's
No,
anything wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being entertained with the supernatural.
yeah,
All
sure.
that stuff is cool. I love horror. Horror is my shtick. But I'm definitely leaning down. I'm more toward the idea that the human mind is the most terrifying monster.
I agree. And I think a lot of people that are very, very deep into the paranormal and they talk about all the experiences they've had, there's definitely something to be said about your brain influencing how you process information and how you perceive things that happen externally to you. So you could wake up and you could hear something, like I told my story about waking up and hearing like pots and pans moving in the kitchen. That could have very well just been a leftover from a dream that I was having. And maybe where I had just freshly woken up, it was just kind of still, the DMT or whatever was still kind of flowing in my brain or whatever it happens to be. Yeah, it could have just been like a chemical thing that was going on in my brain. I don't know for sure. And I think it's that unknown aspect that just kind of leads people to go toward the more interesting direction, which is it was a ghost or it was an anomaly of some kind that doesn't fit within the realm of living people.
I think that is really interesting. One of my favorite films is Goodnight Dragon Inn, where it's so very subtle in its presentation of the supernatural in terms of apparitions. It's like kind of, I guess, where Paranormal Activity makes it very bombastic. Goodnight Dragon Inn is a lot more slow, a lot more, gentle and nuanced in its pacing. Stuff like that is always so, exciting to kind of, to watch. But I've never experienced it, and I'll always, explain it away with something very rational or very succinct, like, oh yeah, it's windy outside, that's why it sounds like someone's blowing in my ear. Like I can do that, and that's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's also something to be said about the area that you live in. Maybe the infrastructure wasn't as good, and there are a lot of places in the US we've talked about in the past where you go into an old house, there's a straight up gas leak, and there's all this asbestos and all this shit that's like getting into your sinuses and messing with your head.
Your nasal cavity, just augmenting whatever it is that you're perceiving in front of you, and you're like, dude, there's something wrong with that fucking house. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It hasn't been zoned.
Yeah, exactly. It hasn't been condemned yet, and people are still living there, and they shouldn't be. So yeah, no, absolutely. And I can see both sides. I've never had anything concrete. It's only just been a couple of really small experiences that could be explained away. But, I think it's interesting talking to the people that I have so far, because some people like she and like Gummy have been very much, yes, I have experienced it. I personally am, I'm in that boat. And whereas Dave is like, nope, I haven't experienced anything really like that. And you're kind of the same, it just, depends on, like we said before, it's like your environment that you grew up in, the way that you perceive what's going on around you, and whether or not you actively want to seek out something paranormal. Because obviously if you're mired in that world, yeah, everything's paranormal. But if you're more rationally sound, then obviously that's going to be tougher to come by.
I mean, I guess it just means I'm boring, but
hey, nothing wrong with boring, man. And
it's pragmatic to go to the Ghost Adventures view party,
Yeah, Ghost Adventures, where that guy Zach, it's like you just hear a whisper in the distance. He's like, "Did it just say kill Zach?" It's like he literally takes it to the absolute extreme, most bombastic thing you could possibly imagine, from the tiniest little sound in the distance.
I mean, it's charming. I love it because it's so charming. Like because all of these characters, like I know that they're not actors, but my God, they're such characters.
Yeah.
I can't remember what show I was watching, but it was a British. You could tell it was a British show because it wasn't a whole lot of intense editing and sharp sound effects that are in the
Yeah.
post.
The Hell's
It's very
Kitchen. Yeah.
slow.
The Hell's
Yeah,
Kitchen
yeah,
sound
yeah, yeah,
effect.
yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fucking hate that violin.
Yeah. It's so overdone. Or like the weird like shaker sound effect when something dramatic happens. I just stop, dude. It's so weird the way American TV does that.
Assault on the senses. It's like I
Yeah.
thought we were going to get scared by ghosts, not by editing. Not your editor needs to
Yeah.
chill the fuck out. But it was a British episode. It was a British show, and they were doing the whole, the ghost hunting thing, and they bring in a medium, because they always have to bring in the medium.
Yeah.
They tell the story about what happened, and how they died, and how they felt when they died, and it's just it's just fascinating to see how they get paid to do this.
Yeah.
And it's always this cute little lady. She's in her 40s, and she walks into the room, and it's like, I remember this room, and there was a dog. I'm not gonna use my British accent for this.
And everybody else is like, whoa. They're just mind blown.
Yeah.
And she's saying the most basic things that any child would experience. Right. And they're all just like
obviously you saw that there was a dog because there's dog scratches on the side of the wall.
There's fossilized dog shit in the corner. Of course you came to that conclusion, dude. It's like, it's not rocket science that you said that.
It's adorable. And then it's, so how did she die? He doesn't want to tell me. She's very, very secrets. It's like, you don't know.
Oh, dude, have you seen that clip? There used to be a talk show in the 90s. I forget the name of it, but there used to be a medium that would appear on there. And in like 2003, this lady goes on because she was like desperate to look for her missing husband. And it basically ended her career because she was talking to the medium, and the medium was like, oh, he's in water. That's why they can't find him, because he's in a body of water somewhere. And she goes, the lady was like, no, he died in 9/11. Or, that's the prevailing theory, is like he went missing during 9/11. And then the medium just goes, oh, no, see, I keep seeing him in water. And everybody in the crowd's just like, did she really just say that shit? She was so wrong. And it basically like ended her whole career after that happened. It was the most awkward thing you'll ever see in your life. I'll put the clip in the Discord after this, but yeah, it's awkward as hell, dude.
That's great. No, because like I love stuff like that. You can't, because you can't come back from that. There is no recovery for that.
Yeah. And she tried to live. She's like, no, but see, I keep seeing him. It's like, I don't care what you see. You're 100% wrong, dude.
This is what actually happened.
Yeah. I don't give a shit. So yeah, it's like anything, man. There's so much snake oil out there, and like you said, if people are getting paid to do something, they're gonna romanticize it, and they're gonna turn into a caricature of the practice. There's something to be said about medium as a practice, and a lot of it is theatrics, is what it comes down to. It's theatrics
exactly that.
Yeah,
theatrics of it all. It's supposed to make you feel like they know what they're doing.
Exactly. And
it's all about showmanship, all about that performance.
And they're so good at it too. They'll set up a seance, and they're like, bring a significant item from their past, and man, they really get into it. It's like their church, their house of worship is their business, and that's just how it is.
Go for it.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they don't sell supplements on the side.
Yeah. There's like televangelists all throughout the South, and if you go on like public access TV, you'll see these dudes selling these prayer cloths. But the thing about them is they run out of prayer energy after a certain amount. So you actually have to re-up on your subscription to make sure that you're up to date on your prayer energy. So that's exactly what mediums do. I mean, it's a business venture, and unfortunately it's one of those things that it has gotten a grip on a large portion of society.
Same thing with conspiracy theories too.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that it's not fun to dive into these, these weird rabbit holes. I remember you were talking about you will go deep into a rabbit hole and find yourself never coming out of the other side the same way again.
Yeah.
I never go past the surface level of any of these stuff. Like it's quirky that they think of things like that, because these folks will go so deep. It starts from chemtrails, and then it becomes the planet isn't an orb.
It's hollow. Yeah.
How did you do that?
Yeah, what a leap, dude. You literally just took a Neo Matrix style leap from one building to another.
So it's when you start finding yourselves into these these conspiracy theory rabbit holes, is the minute they're going to start selling you supplements for 4 easy installments of $99.95.
Yeah.
And because you're way too deep into the grift, you're going to buy them.
Yeah.
Don't.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
And the internet is it's a pulse. It's a new sort of brain that we're trying to navigate. But the thing that's hilarious is I remember growing up and hearing my parents telling me, don't listen to anything you see online. These emails are scams and these things. And now they're the ones that are, not my parents specifically, but older people are the ones that are buying into these things by and large. So there's been such a shift in the demographic that buys into the just complete bullshit that's spread on like Facebook and Twitter.
Actually, AI, what are your thoughts on this? I'd like to know from someone who's, especially who's an IT specialist,
Right.
what are your thoughts about this new generation of artificial intelligence and the way it's being used as grifts?
That's a great question. I think inherently everybody that I work with and some of the highest up people in consulting when it comes to IT are very concerned about it. And I think the number one prevailing concern is it just seems to be that there's this arms race going on right now. There's this speed at which they're trying to develop things. And I have to sit back and ask myself, why? Why are we trying so hard to advance this so quickly? Why is ChatGPT from Google trying to compete so hard against Gronk or whatever Twitter's AI version of it is? But it's like there's this weird... Yeah, it's called Gronk. I don't know why, but that's what like Twitter's. Yeah. And I'm just like, look, I understand that it has practical use. I understand that it can be used for good. Machine learning can be used to increase the efficacy of algorithms and different things. It can be used to further advance certain industries and make work more productive while requiring less human investment as far as time and effort and R&D and all these things. But I have to sit back and ask myself, like, why are we leaning so hard toward things like writing? Why is there a writer's strike where creative people are being outclassed by this medium that is ultimately theft? There's nothing that AI can generate that is not pulled from an existing source. Exactly. It cannot generate anything new. It's only going to give you some weird tapestry amalgamation of shit that's already existed. And so, yeah, I mean,
and data sets that were allocated without the original writer or creator's
consent,
permission, mind you.
Absolutely, yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, so, you'll ask it, hey, generate me this. Okay, well, I'm going to pull from 17, 18 different blog posts and things that people had no idea was being used in this way. And now it's a property of Google. And, one of those things that's crazy is you can go to, I actually looked into this when I was thinking about logos for the show. I ended up with one that's kind of scuffed and simple, but when I was looking into it, you can just go to so many AI logo generators and they pull assets from other logos and just manipulate them and like mirror them and flip them and change the color scheme and stuff. And it's just like, man, this is not a good path to go down in terms of creativity, in terms of the big one that really scares me is deep fakes and specifically deep fakes that are incredibly accurate of like political figures. I think that's the one rabbit hole. That's the one Pandora's box that best not be opened, in my opinion.
Absolutely. What is it? Sora AI. That is. It's
Yes.
not. It's not been made public yet, but that's definitely its model has made significant leaps and jumps into the like. It's surreal just how honest and like believable it is.
Yeah.
No more 6 or 7.
Oh, they got him. They got Future Mute. Well, we got too deep into the AI conversation. They pulled the plug, dude. He might be reconnecting here in just a second. I might need to give him a call again, but we'll see. But, just kind of going on what he was saying, absolutely true. Like I was saying about political figures and stuff. Here, let me go ahead and give him another call. Give him a call back really quick. Oh, it actually can't even load his video. I think he actually lost his connection. Yeah, because this is all I've got right now. Well, like I was saying, I 100% agree with exactly what he said. So we'll give it a second to see if his internet comes back up. But, you know, using AI to generate a deep fake of some kind of political figure is the scariest thing in my mind, because not only do we have to be concerned about jokey deep fakes of like, oh, Will Smith, like the one that I saw was like Will Smith eating a fucking bowl of spaghetti. It's like, haha, it's funny that it generated this. Now we have to worry about, I mean, shit, I'm in the line of fire because my face is on here so often. Somebody could very easily say, I'm going to make a deep fake of Stampede G like robbing a Walgreens or some shit. I know it sounds stupid as hell, but it's like somebody could legitimately do that. If they had the time, if they had the means to get it done, they could legitimately do that. Okay, cool. I think he's back. Yeah, they can copy your face, they can copy your voice, they can say you did all kinds of shit. And like the only viable solution in the future is going to be to have an alibi for literally everything that you do. It's like, and is that kind of what we're moving toward with maybe phones or sort of the, you know, body chips and different things that people are talking about, like this dystopian future where everything you do needs to be tracked. I think we're back. I was joking saying we got a little bit too far into that conversation and somebody decided to pull your plug.
They're listening in on us.
Yeah, somebody said we got to pull the plug on this. This conversation's getting too animated. But yeah, I was just saying, I was just 100% agreeing with what you were saying, which is, you know, deep fakes are very concerning, and we also need to be concerned with not only facial recognition but voice recognition too. I saw a clip, you know, people are doing this like crazy to Joe Rogan because he's got literally thousands of episodes out there of his voice, his cadence, the way that he breathes, the way that he speaks into the mic. And I saw this one about him like analyzing a fucking SpongeBob episode, and it was so convincing that I was genuinely tricked into thinking that it was a real segment on his show. I was like, who the hell did he have like Tom Kenny on as a guest and they were talking about fucking SpongeBob? Like, what's going on here? And then somebody in the comments said,
and video or just the voice?
It was voice and video. Yeah, they were playing a clip like he was kind of like this on the mic where you couldn't actually see his lips moving, but it had everything. It had like his breaths in the mic, the exact way that he ends sentences, the way that he begins sentences. It was undetectable. Like the average person in the comments was like, what episode is this from? And then there was that one person that was like, I can't find this episode. It must be AI. So, and this was a couple months ago, dude. Like the speed at which we're progressing this technology is very, very concerning.
You know, Moore's law and all that, right? Like it's
Yes.
it's just bound to get worse. The singularity is upon us.
Yeah. And like I was talking about with political deepfakes too, you know, what happens when not to get super political about it, but what happens when someone makes a deep fake of like Vladimir Putin declaring war on some country and that country takes it fucking seriously and they're like, you know, actually getting people like getting their military scrambled and getting everything ready, and you know, how are they going to prove that it wasn't them? Because then some people say, oh, it's like what people do online now. They'll say, oh, it's propaganda. It's not a real video. And then other people will say it is a real video. We should go to war with them. And like, there'll be no way to parse what's actually true and what's not true.
It's already such a polarizing discourse to discuss politics, you know,
Yeah.
in these echo chambers and these hotbeds that are bound for, you know, antagonistic engagement.
Yeah.
It only takes one little bit of data that could be easily misconstrued as real
Absolutely.
to just set off a firestorm.
Yeah.
It's a horrible idea to keep this stuff or make this stuff public.
Yeah.
I hate to sound like a movie trailer, but can you imagine if this technology gets into the wrong hands?
Oh no, 100%. Like there's, I envision, because I know about the dark web and I've seen a lot of YouTube videos about what's available there. You can literally go to the dark web and spend $10,000 to hire a hitman to take out a content creator. And people have tried to do it and failed in the past. People tried to hire a hitman for $10,000 in valuation of Bitcoin to take out Boogie2988 and they failed. You know, various different YouTubers have had this happen to them. So you can go on the dark web and you can buy passports, you can buy credit cards that have been stolen, you can buy driver's licenses that have been stolen for fake IDs and different things. So I can only imagine what happens when the types of people that are already engaging in this sort of black market are are able to produce a deep fake for you for blackmail purposes, you know, for a certain monetary value. You can go on there and say, you know, we had this controversy a few months back where a Twitch streamer was caught like watching deep fake porn of other female Twitch streamers that had not sexualized their content whatsoever. So yeah, I can only imagine.
Kick?
What is it?
Was that on Kick?
No, it was on Twitch. Yeah, it was apparently one of Ludwig's friends that had been caught doing that. Like he had the wrong scene up for like 2 seconds and he opened a new tab on his browser and people saw like you know how it shows like the screenshot of your previously opened tabs. People saw like a screenshot of a website that produces deepfake porn and people found his account and all this other leaks and shit happened and it turned out that he was paying to have this stuff made.
The internet is bonkers. The internet
It really is, man.
Really, really, my God.
Yeah, I used to be mind blown at the fact that I could sit on a MySpace account and communicate with somebody else and talk about my love for like, you know, Alisana and these other like post-hardcore bands. And now we're in a time where you have to watch your fucking back because a voice clip could come out that somebody's AI generated of you, a deep fake of you. Like I was saying when your internet was dipping for a second, like I'm on camera all the fucking time. So if somebody was so inclined, they could make like a deep fake of me robbing a store, like security footage. And how can I say that I wasn't there? You know, unless I have some kind of concrete alibi, then I'm fucked, you know, and that's just how it is.
This is some dystopian future type shit. This is exactly what they're talking about in Ghost in the Shell. Are your memories truly your memories?
Yep, exactly. There's been a lot, you know, Terminator talks about it too, like AI advancing to the point that it realizes the biggest detriment in culture is humans. And there's already been, like, I swear they read like a doomsday article, but there's been so many articles about like, oh, Facebook's AI, you know, it's sentient now and like we're having conversations with it. And the first thing it said is that humans must be exterminated, you know, shit like that. So
see, who needs paranormal apparitions when this fucking thing?
Yeah.
This fucking thing will be the end of everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Paranormal experiences got nothing on modern day IT advancements and seemingly the path that we're taking here. Oh, what's up, Dr.
This is a great place to call it a day.
Yeah, man. But hey, seriously, I do want to say, you know, as doomsday-ish as that last topic was, I do just want to say that I super appreciate you coming on. And I knew beforehand that this was going to be a great conversation because we had already kind of had a little bit of back and forth. But like I said, I hate the way that you guys are limited in the chat and we never really got a chance to jump on here and really air out a lot of this stuff that we've kind of been, you know, this conversation was destined to happen. It was going to happen eventually.
It was an inevitability. It was always going to happen. There's no doubt in my mind that that's the case. Because I don't know. I'd see a kindred spirit. I know I don't get weird or anything, but it's like when we were having our back and forth in the chat, and that goes for a lot of the folks who are in there. These are the kinds of individuals that I definitely gravitate toward. This is the kind of conversations I like having, and the fact that you're willing to sit down and have an intellectual conversation with someone about even, you know, things that maybe not everyone else can really latch on to or understand.
Yeah.
You're willing to go there with them, and I have nothing but respect and appreciation for you, and the opportunity to be on has just been an absolute delight and a privilege. So thank you so very, very much for this.
Yeah, you are absolutely welcome, and I want to extend that same to you, man. I am extremely grateful that anybody takes time out of their day to come on here and have a conversation with me. And you know, I'm all about learning. I know that there's a lot of things that I don't know, and the best way for me to learn is to someone who has that concrete experience and has gone through different things in life. So I've learned an immense amount.
You probably learned it that way too.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've learned an immense amount about you guys, about your career paths, about
your social security number.
And to save the world, listen, I know Goku, and to save the world, we're going to need the 25-digit credit card number. We're going to need the last 3 digits on the back. It's the only way we can stop Frieza, dude. Yeah, if the self-checkout aisle says kill all humans, I'm moving to the deep north. Yeah, just go off the grid at that point, dude. Just get out of here. But yeah, like I said, man, I 100% agree with you, and it's all this is about learning for me, and you know, being able to talk to you guys and level with you and have these awesome conversations. I have such a blast doing these that when the stream ends, I'm like wired for hours on end, like just thinking about ideas, and I get re-inspired every time I get a chance to talk to creative people like you. So I really appreciate that as well.
Likewise. Thank you really, really so much for this, Stam. I really, really appreciate it.
All right, man. Well, I will definitely be in touch in the DMs, and I would absolutely love to see that sketch that you made of your now wife. I think that would be so awesome to get like that extra level of future mute lore. You know what I mean?
Will do. I gotta take a look at it. It's in here somewhere. I'll look for it.
All right, man. Well, we'll talk to you later. And again, thanks for your time, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Bye, everybody.
See ya.
Thank you.
What a nice guy. Hey, what's up, SNK? Yeah, he's always been very nice and respectful. I know I kind of leaked our DMs just a little bit, but all we were really talking about was the show. But yeah, he's always been a really nice and respectful guy. And I hope everybody enjoyed that conversation. I know I had an absolute blast talking to him finally. This has been in the works for a while, but he was setting up his studio, and like he said, he was between jobs, so it wasn't the most convenient thing in the world for him to jump on. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and close things out for the night. So I hope everybody enjoyed that episode, and we'll be back next week with episode 15. Don't know for sure if we have a guest just yet, but we might. I've been kind of talking to a couple of people, so we may very well have another guest. And yeah, so with that being said, we'll be back next Wednesday, and you guys have a great rest of your night.